thanks for our lives and everything. I'll do the prayer in Navajo. Neitcha nihdigen God. Aganaho ara honlo na honitsan dolodo yont eren hidigen leni. Eche hot inaben hikajestlo honzat and hiot cartonle. Ba nitsan a kuichi in the hand sagoshi. Betenda ilti and the Elhuzen of Bahonitsen, though it's in a Bahonitsen. The Nachin Sikh has open Nachin Hazo, Nahalchin and Nit, Hindonas, Belchana Nit Ligo, E Katanits, and Ashhorn Hitkonla, and the Laco Ilini, A Hahotzan, Welgay. Ben Hessito let Ashhorn up and Nachinit Edo let Hazoyel Tito, Henit Naran Sikh Hesto. Kuichin khait ashi and the hast in legal the nachin paini clear le khotna ben hissinki Joshin Koron hat agi nabikia da deal tito Koren halte kindan kaidan the Washington DC holgere han sagoshinat ani banana shidate inigi do korot and never has of kato Koro Speaker Damon and the best mahasa anin Lenny Koro and the Vice President Liza Robert on Naharo big it leader he gets it leader Arnold Choyat Hoshina hat agi but his chadi lito bakala nani tsiniki and he didn't never neither Hazo Koro Nahat Sohado Costa Hand Sagoshin Ben Hitch in the hot in Luni the cake Ahodo Nathan leader let Koro that ini kid go Dota Nit Igoshi Koro Bidit Kilton him hat Abijah Toch het Asian hits en hot in Lini, but Bells and Do, Image and Hans, Kester, Ada, Besson, hits you with in or let. Hala Coron, Halchin, Coropa, the Indian hit and Arto. And the name I meet Len hit in Lini, Harlan, Ayon, Akun, John, and had an chill even much in a husband begin Linigid or Yegan Fodigan, Gonachmitsin. Dishin Konas, Linigins on Haban Smithon, Hen, Haholian or let. Ani Ayahan hit Vahasan hit again. The Ayaha Hagan Tea Kester, and the mid ancient Choinil, Harlan Gala, Artswatching, the Haslido, Goodseltadan. Tron Taylor Bensons and Altosas Ant Ahatan land at City Dungeon go down the Hat Hasle, Chilatazun and General Halchinsa. Then Ahazan hit again Lini, although yont Eda. Anil Skokoro and ILZ Hand Sagoshin, Hipahit Eholu, don't unstot in Eda. Nipahit Asian Bahos and Dokoro Ben, Bet and Icon. It's as a hundred on him, a Duncan Sukeston, Hijabit Loans and Ashkar, and Ketkin or Altos and Hulsabunch and Jabadi, in Yabamashu, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman. And thank you again for being with us this afternoon. With that, we have a very good blessing this afternoon as we have our ambassador of the Navajo Nation with us, Miss Navajo. She's here, Miss Shondine Parrish, and Miss Parrish is going to lead us in. If you would please rise and stand for our national anthem. Thank you, everybody. You'll be seated. Before we go and move on forward, I just want to say again, it's an honor having individuals come here from Washington, D.C. to be with the Navajo Nation, especially within our chambers. This Navajo Nation chambers is the home of the people. This is where our elected delegation meets almost every week in trying to identify solutions, results for our Navajo people with the funding that we get from the federal government or the general revenue funds that we finalize through the Navajo Nation. But the history is told through the stories of these murals that are on the walls here. And I want to turn it over to Mr. Donovan Hanley. Mr. Hanley, can you raise your mic or raise your hand?
There you go.
And he's going to give you a brief overview of what these murals and this historical murals are that tells the story of the Navajo people. So, Mr. Hanley, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yate she ki anishle do trohe dlini bashin ashin dashe do touching dashnala ekudanshle. My name is Donovan. I'm with the Legislative Staff Assistant here at the Office of the Speaker. Like Speaker Damon said, this is the home of the people. I'm going to give you a brief introduction. It's going to be real brief. I'll hit some bullet points for you just to kind of give you an idea of where you're sitting at. It's quite the historical building when you think about it. Built in 1934 to 35. It was to resemble a Navajo Hogan, and we always face the east. The doors face the east because all new beginnings, all blessings come from the east. You work your way around clockwise. You start from the male side to the female side, and everything from what's beneath us, the earth, fire, air, all the elements are into this home. So when this was built, all the material that you see in this room were harvested. The logs were harvested from the Chiska Mountains, from the Navajo Nation forests, and the mural was painted by a young Navajo artist, a young man by the name of Gerald Naylor, coming from Pinedale, New Mexico. And I'm going to start over on behind you on the left pillar of Speaker Damon. You have the traditional depiction of Navajo life. You know, we were hunters. For lack of a better word, we were nomadic. But we were with the seasons. There's with Navajo storytelling and Navajo lifestyle, there's always a balance with everything. So you have the beginning, the two men on the one pillar, sand painting, our traditional ceremonial practices, and then you move on to the introduction of the Spaniards into the Southwest. At one time, Arizona was also part of Mexico, so the Spaniards were laying ground in this area. You come right above the exit sign, and that's the conception or introduction of the military, the U.S. American Army. Moving on forward, you see the task that the Navajo people are doing, the skill set. We are silversmith. We are artisans with our tapestry, with our silversmith, as well as agriculture or food. Our diet was very organic. Everything went into, the balance of home that we have both sides represented. Now, this is the history of the Navajo on this first panel. Then we move on to the next panel where you have the young man with the hair bun. Where you see the hair, it's called siyeth. With the two soldiers. We have them coming in, and this is really the encroachment of the U.S. government coming in, just after the Mexican-American War. They came in and they were talking about a lot of lands and saying, we want this American dream to last, but we know that the Native Americans were here. How do we live together? So they were trying to push it and said, let's go into our first round of treaty talks, and saying, you see the men talking to the soldiers right there in a little group, with the elders, the leaders sitting below them, and we're talking about, we want this land, we want to kind of put you in a certain allotment of land, and this is where you're going to go. In the first talks, Navajo people weren't about it. There are no chiefs, there are no presidents, there were no leaders in the beginning, so these are all clansmen who represented each of the clans, and they came together and they discussed and said, no, this is not for the Navajo people. This is the land that we use. We use it in balance with the animals, with the seasons, and they were always moving around in the region. So this Four Corners area of Arizona, Utah, New Mexico, and Colorado was all land that we used. So we have 4 sacred mountains from the east, south, west, and north. And the middle of that panel you see now is that they're discussing. Now we move on to the left. You have the wars. Not just our wars were fought, but the Pueblos, a lot of the tribes here in the Southwest, the Apaches to the south of us, we're all fighting for land, and through government order, you have the, how do I say, like the gathering of Native people. You're no longer allowed to live here. We're now going to use force, and we don't have modernized weaponry, so we lost that battle, and says you're going to move out. And so the third panel to the left, right by the window to the right side, you have the herding of Navajo people. Kit Carson, the gentleman right above the window with the mustache, the goatee, and the hair with the hat, was a successful general, if you will, in that he produced a campaign called the Scorched Earth Campaign, and they burned fields, they burned homes, they killed animals to drive all the Navajo people out. And some of the stories and interpretations, and so Fort Defiance, which is just located right here north of Window Rock, was one of the points, the meeting points where they herded the people from the Central Agency area and brought them to Fort Defiance, thus moving on to Fort Wingate, which you guys passed on I-40. Route 66 is called the Mother Road. When you look at American history, there's so much history there, but what Route 66 doesn't identify is that it's also a trail of tears to the Cherokee and a long walk to the Navajo people, that this iconic road, this Route 66, Interstate 40, that goes across the nation, is actually built on top of tears and hardship for many Native American people. So right on top, he's pictured there, and you see them talking. When they went on this long walk, they were not allowed to carry much. We had no luggage, and there was no wagons for extra supplies that you needed. Everything was going to be taken care of, and so they forced people on the walk. Now, what was really gruesome is that a lot of our elders were lost. A lot of stories, a lot of prayers and ceremonies were lost with those people because they couldn't make it on the walk. Our first chairman of the Navajo Nation was 6 years old, and his mother perished as she went on the long walk, and he was raised by his aunts and his family, and that's how he came to me when he was raised, and he did return. So you have on this left side of this panel above the window, the elders crying, people are starving. They go to Fort Sumner, we call Bosque Redondo. It's south, east, or central New Mexico. If you've ever been past the Sandia Mountains, you'll know that it's very desolate, very flat, and some of the organic foods that we were preparing on this first panel were not able to harvest on this one. So people are now coming. So you kind of, the artist Naylor kind of has little intricacies in his mural that kind of questions. I like many artists around the world, they throw in little things that make you think about it. So this gentleman, the soldier with his hand, more like mine, his finger is almost in the gentleman's mouth. It's because they were starving. You're only given so much. You see the women are carrying sacks because they were given commodities. I said our diet was very organic traditionally before, but now we have new diets. We have new diseases that came from this period. Fry bread. Fry bread is a cultural food. It's not a traditional food, but it's something that was adapted to the Navajo people. But we call it also a piece of survival food. You know, it's what was brought back from here. Now you have the women moving on beyond the pillar. The women are yelling at the soldier. Notice the soldier is paying them no mind, because in that society, in the American society that came in, the government that came in, was that the men are the head of the household. Women were of no distinction as far as decisions were made in the home. So even though the women are yelling and they're crying at him, he's not paying them attention because it was the men. And this is where the shift was. We talk about the shift, about domestic challenges, was that this shift was saying that men were greater than women, when in actuality, Navajo women and Navajo men were in balance. The home, the body, the attire that we wear, the regalia, the jewelry that we wear, all has both sides. There's always a common comparison that you're both men and women, your mother and your father. Even in our clans, we give 4 different clans, and the mother is always first. So we go on above the door. You have the treaty signing in 1868. Now, in 1868, the treaty stated some lines. We're one of the very few tribes in the U.S. that has a treaty, and in this treaty kind of outlined what are some of the things we're going to do to live harmoniously among one another. As more people come out west, the gold rush is happening. You have commerce, you have the railroad that was coming out here. There was big plans for the west, and so we needed a proper partnership out here. We, as in the nation as a whole. So the Navajo men, the elders, agreed, said, okay, this treaty document has come out here a few times. It was just out here for 150th anniversary of the treaty, and now it's back at the Smithsonian. There are copies around, and we are working on getting the treaty itself back out here. There's this projects in works. So they sign it, they agree, you're going to go home. Now, there's no bus fare, there's no train tickets, they have to walk back. This is miles and miles, hundreds of miles of them. So you have settlements like Tohajale outside of Albuquerque that were settled. And from there, Navajo people were given a small allotment of supplies. They were given 2 sheep over on this panel right here. They were given 2 sheep to rebuild, and we go up here to the top. So you have the little clay adobe house looking facility. That is the agency office. It was one of It was one of the agency offices where the government is saying in the treaty that you can return home with these provisions, and you're going to have these stipulations that go to with your living lifestyle. So one of them is the agency. You have an agency that's going to be looking over you, and they're going to approve yay or nay what your basic needs are, your necessities, and how you're going to live. And that's kind of what this represents, this panel here. Above it, we have the railroad. And this is another little piece where the artist put his name on the railroad as it came through. Now, there were several opportunities when the railroad came through, and you'll see the abundance of supplies. Now we go back into the artwork. We go back into the tapestry. This is the period of the trading posts, when we were selling goods, silversmith, and then now we're plentiful back in harvest, agriculture, animals. Our first chairman, I'm using him, Chi Dodge, had some 166, maybe more plus in his herd of sheep, and then he had cattle, and then he had horses, and so we're now back at this. But this depiction right here on this panel right here is representing the Great Depression era, when things were minimal, limited. You had limited things. So we go back into Allotment Act, where the government now says we want to settle a little bit more, and there was the New Deal, with tribes. That's kind of this period right here. That's what the panel represents, and so they had to downsize. So when you had a large farm of animals, now you're back down to 2 again per animal. You're down to a smaller space, a grazing area. The 2 gentlemen up on top, the first, again, excuse me, I read fast, but the first council meeting was July 7th, 1923. And it happened because the U.S. government needed a governing body of the Navajo people to go into lease agreements, because there's oil. Now there's and today we have abundance of natural resources that are here, but oil was what they were looking at first. And so there has to be a deal on the land. So the 2 gentlemen up here are chairman and vice chair. Chairman is with the glasses. His name is I believe Henry Chi Dodge, but we come to know him as Chi Dodge. He was enacted, and he was put on the oversight to this agreement. And he served his first time, I believe, like 8-something years, and then he left, and then he came back again. He's always been in the government. He was a gentleman whose grandparents or his parents were on the Long Walk. Here we have more formalized buildings. This is where we start formalizing the government. We start putting into some of the stuff that what the treaty puts in. So you have the 5 agencies. Navajo Nation is 127,000 square miles now. We're larger than the state of West Virginia, and we have 5 different agencies, and we span to 3 different states. And so now it's the job of these agencies to make sure that the Navajo people are progressing in a in a manner that is appeasable to everyone. And then we go back to our roots, the animals, the sheep. Part of the agreement, the Treaty of 1868, was that the children of the pillar where they're going to go to school. You have the young man holding an easel, the young woman holding her books in her arm, was that we're going to teach your children how to be modernized. We're going to modernize the Navajo people, and you're going to speak like us, and English is required. This whole section, again, I'm abbreviating everything. This is a mountain of history and culture that I'm kind of doing real quick, but you can go into the whole boarding school era and what that was like and how traumatic that was for these young Native American students. They weren't asked to go, they were told to go. You have to leave. And then it left the elders here, where are our children. There's a lot of strong spiritual connectivity, even in just presence. Our grandparents always said half the battle was just showing up. And that was because you're there in the energy. We move on. We'll go back to industrial era. So now we have water established. And I think we agree most that that's still a main priority for Navajo people, that is water is so precious and water is so few that we are emphasizing it. So a little bit here with the sheep. The boarding school, you may notice again, the flag is, again, the artist kind of flew the flag backwards, but it was an intent to make a statement. And it's saying that, we're here, we're abiding. You have the young children carrying their books, going off to school. But if you look at this panel versus the first panel that I showed you to, there's a big appearance change here, is that the children's hair are shorter. They're cut. That whole idealistic, the whole idea, the look and image of our children now have changed from tziyeh to long hair and braids to now we have short hair and our clothing is different. The young man and young woman above the exit sign are holding a diploma, saying that they're educated now, but you notice that their hands, the young man is still holding on, the cornstalk is wrapped around his arm. The young woman is holding the sheep. Her hands are on the sheep, is that we are going to be educated, but we're not going to forget our traditional values. We goes on to the farming era, to our enterprises, and the last pillar, you have the women. And to kind of match what the men are doing over here, they're doing the traditional work of corn grinding. There's a purpose to everything. And how we speak and how we present ourselves and how we address different visitors. And so this mural kind of depicts the brief history of when things were starting to, again, back into the Spaniards, was that they're starting to be dialogued. Our oral history goes centuries before. But as far as the written history, this is what you're looking at. You may notice how in the beginning I had mentioned that when you walk into a home, you always go into a clockwise motion, is because that's honorable, the thing to do. These are some of the life steps. Even in the section that you go in, there are certain thoughts like the thinking, the planning, the enacting, and then the following up goes into this. Everything goes into a Navajo home. But the mural is actually painted backwards. Our leaders sit here and sit where you are. At one time, there was 88 council delegates. Now we have 24. And they sat on this floor, and they're always bringing all their values, all traditions, and all the priorities of their communities, and how do we conduct it here. But this mural is kind of written backwards. What the artist did was to show that you never want to go back in this process again. We don't want to see ourselves going backwards. You always want to progress forward. And so it's a constant reminder, not only to us here at the legislative offices, executive and judicial offices, but also to the constituents, our community members. They can come in here, this is their home, and they can look at it and say, wow, I remember some of these things, and this is not where we want to go. We want to have a say in some of these things, we want to speak well of each other, and we want to move together forward. So this is kind of the manner, was that you never want to see it going by this way, you always want to progress clockwise. Where Speaker Damon is sitting, you have the Navajo Nation seal. There is another panel on the back side of that was painted, but it was through much deliberation and compromise that was like, no, we're going to cover that back up, because where Navajo is going is something greater. We didn't want to box ourselves in certain things. So In essence, that's the Navajo Nation Council chambers. I don't think I've finished it. It was painted, the mural was painted in 1943. The young man, Gerald Naylor, was only 26 years old. He was educated in Phoenix Indian School, then on to Santa Fe Indian School, was like you could say like an intern with a Scottish artist, and then came back and put his own flair. So this technique that he's using is kind of like a watercolor. The images are traced on a paper and then punched through a hole, and then the color is then kind of almost bled through, like a chalk, through the holes, and then it's kind of smeared. So there's a whole technique to this whole thing. He did have another young gentleman helping him, but we don't know exactly how much was doled out to each of them. Speaker Damon did say it went through renovation, I believe, like 4 years ago. And so there is some small water damage. You can kind of see the drippings, but it's just aged. It's aged so well with what it has been hit with, but it represents so much more. And again, just there's so much detail and stories in the middle of all these pillars that's just a brief description. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanley, and thank you for giving that brief mural oral history. Usually, when you do come in and take a tour of the chambers, those tours can last up to 4 hours, just specifically giving details on each one of these panels and each one of these sections. So again, thank you very much. So we do have, prior to the pandemic, we had numerous visitors to our chambers every day, and we had numerous visitors who come to love the architecture of the home that was created almost 86 years ago. This place as a structure has been standing here, and it is the people's home. And we just, again, thank you very much for being here with us in our chambers. With that, let's move on down. There is a presentation that was wanting to be given by our unique statutes of post educational process and our traditional leaders over the years who have not only created a way and through government, but also created a way through, as Mr. Hanley indicated, a way for our people to thrive forward through education. As we know, for the longest time, Dine College was one of the first institutions across the whole United States that was created, I do believe in 1964, was one of the first colleges that was run fully by a Native American or Indian tribe. Mr. Charles Roessel is here, who is the president of Dine College, and Dr. Elmer Guy, who is the president of Navajo Technical University. They're here. Mr. Roessel, if you want to raise your hand, and Dr. Elmer Guy, who's there. They are going to give you a presentation and move forward on Dine College, Navajo Technical University, as we can hear. So I'll give the floor over to you, Dr. Roessel.
Can you guys get some extra air to talk louder with these masks, right? Is this mic on? Don't lift it up. Just kind of squat down. My name is Charles Roessel. I'm the president of Dine College. Ani Nishle, Matif, Clan of Scotland, Bashishchin, Ashin, Shache, Otto, German, Chanella. It's good to see some of you. We don't have a lot of time, but I want to start with a story, a short story that I think is also indicative of this gathering. 52 years ago, a group of people from Washington, much like yourselves, came to the Navajo Nation. They came to then Chairman Raymond Nakai. Raymond Nakai brought him not here, but in his office across the way. And in that meeting, he told him, we're going to start a college. Now, the people that were you then, they laughed at him. They laughed at the chairman of the Navajo Nation. And they said, my God, Mr. Chairman, you don't mean to tell me you Navajos think you can run a college. 52 years later, I'm standing here in front of you. as the first tribal college in the country, the first accredited tribal college in the country. We have 6 campuses across 2 states. We just signed an MOU, and we now are in Aneth, Utah. We have other sites. We just signed an MOU with the BIE so that we now have dual credit centers across our reservation. We signed another MOU. We're just talking in the last week. So the opportunities that is wrapped in a responsibility that we have with COVID is something that we take very seriously. We've expanded. I was taught very early and very young, when things are tough is when you expand. When things are tough is when you think big thoughts. You don't retreat. That's been the story of the Navajo Nation forever, and it will continue to be. We don't ask for your permission to do the things, and you're not here for that. We ask for your help. Some of the things that we could use help with right away within that college, NTU and other institutions, other tribal colleges, would be to one, and this is administrative, allow tribal colleges to be a part of the E-rate program. That's a simple thing to do. For all tribal colleges in the country, that would only be $24 million. A stroke of a pen will make that happen. The other thing administratively, we have some grants allowing us. We applied for a grant to build a lab in Tuba City. We were turned down because they told us we do not qualify as a tribal organization. We appealed it. We don't agree with it. Again, a stroke of a pen. What would that do? Some of our faculty have been published in the last couple of months about COVID and the impact on the Navajo community. We are hosting a conference, an international conference in February about the pandemic and its impact in Indian country. So research is a big part of who we are going forward. We could use your help there, because a lot of the doors are shut to us. We're not allowed research with the USDA. We need to go to Arizona State, a University of Arizona, and be the stepchild. Yet we have the capacity today. And that's what we're looking at right now, is to say, we'd like to have your help in getting there. We have a lot more. We're handing things out. And it's good to see some of you. Secretary Cruz, good to see you again. And of course, Director Stevens. So thank you. I'll stop there and let Dr. Guy speak.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Elmer Guy. For limited time. Can you all hear me? I just want to point out a few things that's critical to us. Some of them was mentioned by President Roessel. The main thing is really equitable funding. If you will look at historically black colleges, for example, and compare that with TCUs, we're really, it's hard to see the big difference. And so a lot of times we want to bring the funding levels for tribal colleges to something that's favorable. Part of the funding, the tribal colleges, there's different streams of funding. There's Title I, there's Title II, and there's Title V. Under Title V is funding for Navajo Technical University and United Tribes Technical College in North Dakota. In that funding distribution, that needs to be fixed. We have serving about 1,800 students, and United Tribes, they serve about maybe 700 students. But the funding they get
this Title V, they get 66% and we get 33%. Part of the problem is when the legislation was amended, there was a whole harmless clause. That was back in 2005. At that time, there's a whole harmless. The monies that both schools were getting would be maintained, and any new money, then Indian student count would kick in. The Indian student count has not kicked in since 2005. Again, it's an easy fix. It can be done today, it can be done tomorrow. So, you know, President Trump will say something that he corrected, it'll be fine. The other thing to mention is the E-rate is mentioned. The other is the special temporary authority that we have now with FCC, which gives us an opportunity to use 2.5 megahertz of a spectrum that is available. So we have that for 90 days. We'd like to make that a permanent authorization. With having that ability, we're able to extend our hotspots for students, since we're offering 51% online, 46% hybrid. And so a lot of the students don't have internet connectivity here on Navajo because the broadband needs to be developed. And so if we have that up on a permanent basis, we'll reach more students. And so that's the other thing. Maybe two more things. One more is we're in the process of building an environmental laboratory. And we've been working with the state of Arizona, and we want to build that in Chinle, Arizona. And this laboratory will test soil, water, air, soil. And we want to help with the uranium mine cleanup. There are over 500 abandoned uranium mines on Navajo. So there are monies to clean that up. And if we have that laboratory, it'll create jobs for Navajo. A lot of times what happens is there's money put out, outside entities will get these grants, and then when the grant ends, everything goes. Well, we want to sustain those, and we want to build a laboratory, and if there's some money to help us construct that facility, that'll be awesome. I think that's my time is up. We have in the packet, we have prepared a PowerPoint that's in your packet, and there's some talking points that are prepared by American Indian Higher Education Consortium, and it kind of hits on some of the things that we mentioned. Thank you for this opportunity here, Mr. Speaker, members of the council, and our honored guests here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Guy and Mr. Roessel, for that presentation. And I know it's limited time, but again, as you can see, the concerns and needs of not only two of the pristine colleges within Indian country are on the Navajo Nation are looking for further assistance, and that further assistance is only guided through the acts of the federal government. So please take those requests into consideration, and we greatly appreciate that. With that, moving on forward, the time now is 1 o'clock, so we are going to call our meeting to order. This is the 24th Navajo Nation Council with Honorable Vice President and Second Lady and the Washington, D.C. Delegation Roundtable discussion. Before I move on, let me just do some housekeeping rules. If you see the south chamber, the exit here with the soldier above, if you walk through that door, is the men's quarters to use the restroom. On the north chamber, with the two students above the exit, is a women's restroom. Again, there's one way in, and then there's one way out through the North Conference Room. If you are going to exit at any point in the chambers. With that, let me go ahead and have my colleagues introduce themselves of the 24th Navajo Nation Council. I will start down here with Honorable Mark Freeland.
Thank you, Speaker Otto, members of the 24th Navajo Nation Council, Mr. Vice President, Second Lady, thank you for being here as well. Yat a tossing she mark feeling the shadow. Don't let you twits on the slow kia on a bushes chin. Senja Kinney the Shache. I don't send up at the Edison. I'm from Crown Point, New Mexico. I represent 8 chapters out of Eastern Navajo Agency in the New Mexico portion of the Navajo Nation. I represent Crown Point, Dalton Pass, Standing Rock, Vicente, White Rock, Lake Valley, Herfino, and Nyaza. So my 8 chapters comprise in 2 different counties as well in the state of New Mexico. But we really look forward to our discussion today, and thank you for being here. Welcome to the Navajo Nation as well, and I just want to say thank you as well to the speaker and your staff for putting this event together, and look forward to our further discussion here in Sago. Thank you. God bless.
Well, Stewart.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Wilson Stewart Jr. I represent 4 communities of Fort Defiance, Sawmill, Arizona, Crystal, New Mexico, and Red Lake / Navajo, New Mexico. My clans are Twitzelni Ainshle, which is Big Water, Nanish Ejatachitni, which is Red Streak running into charcoal, and then Tkachitni, which is Red Streak. And then my Nollies are Pibitwani, which is Deer Springs people. Those are my 4 clans, and I am very happy to be here amongst you as delegation from Washington, along with my colleagues, and again, Vice President and Second Lady, thank you for being here with us and joining us this afternoon. And Speaker, thank you, and the staff, thank you for assisting us this morning into this afternoon, along with the individuals that are also helping us to the executive branch as well, from monitoring to making sure that we follow all the guidelines necessary to have our meetings like this today. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Honorable Paul Begay.
Thank you, Speaker, Honorable Delegate Seth Damon, Vice President. Thank you, and also the honored guests from Washington. Yeah, my name is Paul Begay. I represent 5 local communities, governing communities in the sprawling 27,000 square miles of Navajo land. I am of the Gap and the Rock clan. The gentleman sitting behind me is Betahni, the one that just introduced himself over there. He is also the same clan, different clan names, but we're all brothers together. We're not from immediate family, but through clanship system, our family ties, clanships tie us together in that fashion. 3 different name clans, but we're brothers. So that's the way our clanship systems work. I'm born for a Bitterwater clan. My maternal grandmother or grandfather is of the Tyrant House clan. 4 clans that we identify ourselves with. So thank you coming to Navajo land. We hope to see you on a regular basis out here so that you can better understand Navajo out here. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Speaker. To my colleagues, the 24th Navajo Nation Council delegates, Vice President Leiser and Second Lady Dottie, thank you for joining us. Welcome to our visitors from Washington. My name is Charlene So. I'm originally from Sweetwater, Arizona. I take care of 5 chapters: Sweetwater, Aneth, Red Mesa, Mexican Water, and Mexican Water. Isnasmas. And I want to say thank you again. We had a good formal discussion this morning. My clans are Nanisht Ejana Dat the Natan Shlo, but Anibashashin, Kachini Dasha Chek, Lachini Dashanala, Ako Yahat. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on down, Honorable Brown.
Yate she trobahan shlo look up bashin ki ani dashe adot azaslana dashnala ado chilchimbi tro dan hot sodot trodenishe adabanasha. Hello, my name is Nathaniel Brown. I was elected by 3 communities in Western Agency from Chilchimbito, Danahotso, and Kayenta. But of course, we represent the whole Navajo Nation on the nation and outside the 4 sacred mountains. So we do have a lot of our Navajo people who actually reside in DC and everywhere else across the globe. So we represent them everywhere. It's an honor to be here, to sit in front of you. I think every one of us that are sitting here, I think we've been chosen by the holy people to be in our positions. I think that we've been raised and been blessed by holy people that said these are the individuals that can handle the pandemic, that can handle some great atrocities that are upon us throughout the whole world. So we're lucky, and it's a privilege to represent the Navajo people, our Navajo nation, and to sit before you, to sit with each other and break bread. So I hope that you're enjoying your mutton stew and fry bread. It's delicious, so enjoy it, and welcome to the great Navajo nation. Yeah.
Thank you. Honorable Yellowhair.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Navajo Nation capital here. I'm very proud you are here to see what the problem we have. There's a lot of serious problems here with the Navajo Nation. We need funds. Welcome. I'm certainly welcome on behalf of the Navajo Nation. My name is Jimmy Yellowhair. I'm from Black Mesa. That's where we just have canceled the contract with the Peabody coal mine. You heard about coal, one of the largest, the best fine coal up there. So we don't have no more coal. That's where we usually get our revenue, like maybe $50 million a year. We don't have that anymore. And also there's a non-state Congress senators in Washington, D.C., or Arizona. They have destroyed our life, which is a Navajo and Hopi land dispute petition. That's where I'm from. I represent 5 big chapters up there at land dispute. Hard-rut area, one of the most that people got hurt. United States Congress, our own government, United States have demolished the Hokan to move them on to another place, city like Holbrook and Winslow. So we need help up there in Black Mesa. What we need up there is we need roads to be repaired. We need that one. We had some issues with Arizona, our own political in Phoenix and the Republican Democrat. We don't get money from them. They kind of avoid us our needs. We need help from you. I think there's a very good reason why you are here. You are here to understand the problems. When you get back to Washington, D.C., help us, my friend. We really like you to come up here, and thank you very much. My clan system is Tohan Hunagahni, means warriors, fight against enemies. That's how we won World War II for the United States. And then my dad's side is Torachini, water bitter. And then my grandpa is a salt clan, pure salt. And my paternal grandparents is and I'm very happy you're all here. I'm very blessed. We're blessed, the Navajo Nation. Thank you very much, Vice President, Mr. Lizer, and your wife. And also, I'd like to say thanks to my 24 councilmen who are here, my colleagues, and like he said, we're all be a leader, been picked by Holy, and we're doing our best to take care of our own needs here, our judicial responsibilities, what we have. I'm a member of the Budget Finance Committee. And thank you very much. Yeah, means thank you very much. I'm glad you are here. Come and go when you're going back to Washington, D.C., and have a safe trip home. And we bless you all. Thank you very much.
Chairman Nez.
Good afternoon. I'm the man from San Juan River. Welcome to the great Navajo Nation. You all probably heard of San Juan River from the Gold King mine spill. It went through 4 of my communities of Upper Fruitland and Anizal, San Juan, and Hogback. And that's how we have gotten on the map because of the yellow plume that went through. And to this day, we still are waiting from the federal government to give an answer of recompense to our dear Navajo people. I represent 6 chapters along the river, Hogback, San Juan, Upper Fruitland, as well as Burnham and Newcomb. So just like to welcome you. I'm the chair of Resource and Development Committee of the 24th Navajo Nation Council. Thank you.
Mr. Vice President.
Yeah, Myron Lizer, Navajo Nation Vice President, Comanche Nishle, Tohanet Basis Chin, Otto Comanche Deshache, Clash Deshanelli. I have the pristine and just a great joy for me to have the Second Lady of the Navajo Nation with me, and I think she'll introduce herself too, but ours has been one of just a great time working together and apart. So I came from the private sector, so I used to work, my office and desk was 15 feet away, so to be joined again this close is an extreme honor for me as I sit before you and address you. So thank you. I appreciate everybody that's come from Washington, D.C. I spent a lot of time there. Real quick secret. Before I became vice president, I'd never been to D.C., and now I've been there 15 times. And then getting to know a lot of you, Doug, I appreciate you being here, Mr. Hoelscher, and just, a lot of the partners. I call you federal family, and to the ire of some, but, we are to work with you all, and so I appreciate everyone. Doug Hoelscher, Jenny Lichter, and Eric Hargan, Jenny Hovland. Some of you are close dear friends. Rear Admiral Michael Wiyaki, it's good to be here. Good to have you here. Brian Johnson, our friend over there. He's just from across the way over here. Rosalind, good to have you here this morning, or this afternoon now. Assistant Secretary Sweeney, Yate, welcome to the Navajo Nation. Deputy Cruz, Mark Cruz, appreciate you being here as well. Bart Stevens, Yate, good to have you here. He comes in here regularly, so he's at home. And Catherine Sullivan, I appreciate you. John C. Anderson, I'm not sure if all of your contingent made it out here as well, but Paul Lawrence, Chris Kotwicki, and staff. I know you have a cohort of staff that's with you all the way from D.C. So, you know what? As I became vice president, somebody, and I'm a former pastor. I'm also I guess a faith-based, spiritual. Somebody told me that gone are the days when you have to go to Washington, and the first year and a half wasn't indicative of that, but there will be a time when Washington will come to you. And so having you here is kind of a prophecy fulfilled for me. And I also look forward to many more opportunities as we have an ongoing invitation to the administration to come and to help. Recently, Secretary Sonny Perdue came out, and so we acknowledge that, and we thank him for coming out. And one by one, look for more cabinet level members to come out, because as we shared with you, Doug, this morning, a lot of times when we go to DC, we have to kind of re-educate the new members, and you're kind of wasting valuable time, right? And then bring them up to speed on advocate for you, and then what you need their help with. But to have you all here speaks well, and ongoing now, we can reference, remember we talked about that back at Window at our Capitol. So as we advocate, so this is very important time. I appreciate this opportunity, but anytime that we have the White House and the administration and to come out provides an opportunity for Native American tribes to champion a solution to bring long-held issues across Indian country, we relish that collaborative opportunity. We look for those endeavors to generate constructive movement And so we thank the administration again, and our support of President Trump and the administration is one where we, as the largest land-based tribe here, wish to be a vital contributor to this administration and to help us bring the great change that we're needed here over the next finish of this term and possibly the next 4 years. So we appreciate that. But the myriad of meetings that we've had already, the overarching element of this is protecting and the protection of our tribal sovereignty. And under that umbrella, we'll discuss economic development and business development. We'll touch on tribal infrastructure, healthcare, safer communities, champion heritage and education, and building a thriving community and ensuring better health for our people. We appreciate that. And just to let you into, I like to kind of joke, but some of you remember Ice Cube came up with the a contract for Black America, and I was like, man, he stole our thunder. We should have one for Indian country. And then, lo and behold, a few days later, here comes this initiative to help First Nations people here. So we're in this together, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak and represent our Navajo Nation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and 24 Navajo Nation Council. Let's all work together to bring all of these things that we're talking about here in our various breakout sessions and advance and move the tick one more degree for improvement and benefits of our great Navajo Nation. So, I appreciate you. And ladies and gentlemen, the second lady of the Navajo Nation. I'm stealing Speaker's thunder now. Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Go ahead, First Lady.
Dottie Lizer Inisha, Kia Ani Nishla, my Diskijin Bashichin, but Dotnie Dashiche, Kashkitni Dashanella. Again, I just wanted to thank you all for coming here. We really appreciate you being here to, hear what our issues, topics are. My husband, Vice President, just talked about when we used to work together. The other day I had a WebEx meeting and I sat in his office. It's kind of, there's nothing in there. I sat in his office and I looked around and it's like time stood still. There was a 2019 calendar behind me when the campaign started. On this other side was a 2019, when they had went into office. And so, it just brings, a warm feeling when I get to sit next to him. So I appreciate, again, you all being here, but that's just a little bit of, a little history there. We're excited to be here. I did speak to a few of you, and I just kind of told you I'm not a political person. I'm not, I'm a business person. So, but I'm happy to be here. I'm a public servant now, and so look forward to seeing what, what we all can collaborate about and get together and just share ideas. And so thank you. Thank you for being here.
I have one more individual from the council. Halona. Just a quick introduction.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm Pernell, Halona. I'm very happy to be here with you all today. Welcome to the Navajo Nation. There's a lot of issues that we have to iron out. Of course, this COVID threw a big spin on us all over the world. And so we're having to deal with it here on the Navajo Nation. We're learning to live with this virus as the rest of the world is. And of course, we're all looking forward to the vaccine and hopes that we get one soon. And that, because the vaccine, you never know, later on, 6-7 months down the road, you might have problems with it. We don't know yet. That's why there's a lot of testing that has to go on beforehand. I'm a member of the Human Health Education Service Committee, and so I have a great deal of interest in the veterans and the health and also education for the Navajo Nation. And that's a big part of the Navajo Nation. And however we move forward to make things better for the people here, we're trying to work hard to use this CARES money and trying to get it spent to help the people. And of course, the bureaucracy the flow of the money that comes to us here, it takes a long time for things to get moving. And we didn't get the money in a good time, ahead of time because of the lawsuit. And so we finally got it, and we started to working on how to try to spend it. Of course, the deadline that was imposed on us was kind of a short notice. I don't understand why they made that short notice, because they also know that the bureaucracy, the red tape that has to come along with it, takes time. And so we're under the gun now, trying to get this funding spent so we don't have to send it back to the federal government. The ideal thing would be to extend the deadline. I don't know that the states have that kind of a deadline either, that they have the money that they got from the federal government. I've never heard of the state have a deadline. And if they do, I'd like to know what it is, because it's not it's the deadline that you imposed on the Navajo Nation is kind of stringent. You know, we're having to work hard trying to get this thing spent. And so, like I said, the extending the deadline would be the ideal thing, and I know the things have been going through Congress and the Senate to do that, but they've been failing. So we're kind of still on the deadline here. I just wanted to let you all know that we're working on it, and it takes time. But I really want to thank all of you all for coming here today. I know I've met Mrs. Sweeney, Mr. Yaki. I'm glad to see you again today. Sir, I forget your name again, but I remember we talked several times. But I'm glad to see you all here today again. Whatever we can work out, government-to-government relations here, we're all working for the same purpose, to help the people of our nation. And that is why you're here today, is to help us to understand what's happening here on the reservation. Things move slow all over the country. The way we talk and the way we discuss our situations, you know, we need to get down to the nitty gritty and get right to the point, instead of going around the corner and talking about it, because those things don't help us. Action is what's really going to be. Oh, I'm sorry. So that right now is just for who I am and what I'm about. And thank you all for coming. I appreciate all you.
Thank you for that. Before I go on to this lecture, let me go. I have one more delegate sitting in the back, Honorable Otto. So, and then I have our chairman sitting in the gallery too. Honorable Otto.
Good morning. My name is Otto So. I'm a member of the 24th Navajo Nation Council. I represent the community of Tuba City in the western portion of the Navajo Nation. So, every time I get to Washington, I always say, my line is, I have a big backyard on the western edge of the Navajo Nation. That's the Grand Canyon. And look at me, that's a shade, that's not Jenny, that's another. I don't, again, thank you very much. Just is who I am. I don't want to take up time. There's presenters, and again, the delegation from Washington, the White House, and Assistant Secretary of Interior, Sweeney. Thank you for coming to the Great Navajo Nation. And again, we have our counterpartners here. We have BIA, our area director, Mr. Stevens, and our area director for Indian Health Services here at the table. And the dialogue for the federal government and the Indian government-to-government relationship is something that we have to nurture. And again, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker and members of the council, and Mr. Vice President and Madam Second Lady, thank you for being a part of the conversation. And everybody in the room here, tribal division directors, tribal staff, and again, just thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Honorable. So, Chairman Hino, if you want to wave, or Chairman Hino is right there. You want to say something real quick? Only you can speak. Geschichte last to the Speaker Damon, the 24th Nomination Council Shananta, Kona Seat Carnegie, and our guests and visitors in the gallery here. Good morning. My name is Jamie Henio, and I'm on the 24th Nomination Council as chairman of the Budget and Finance Committee, and I represent the 3 communities in New Mexico that are not part of the Navajo Nation physically. They are the communities of Rema, Alamo, and Tochile. And therefore, and my clans are Hashlishni, Tolichini, Vashishin, Tokitlini, Shacheda, that Ajishanali, that echo. And I just got off the call. I was sitting in the parking lot all morning, since this morning on a conference call with our Budget and Finance Committee. And what we were discussing with the executive and legislative branch was the CARES Act allocation. And since we, as council, we've allocated all of the CARES money that we received, and then they were signed into law by President Nez. And Vice President Leiser is here with us. Good to see you again. And so with that, all of the allocations, we are in the midway point, closer to December 30th, and therefore what we were going over was all the allocation and the programs and division directors that were on the phone call to see where they were at with their allocations and expenditures. And so with that, we also needed to do is we need to reprogram some of that money to other projects that will likely look like they'll meet the December 30th deadline. So we've been on the phone for many hours discussing that. We just ended the call a while ago. So as curiosity got the best of me, I decided to make my way into the chambers and kind of listen in on the tail end of this discussion. So it's good to see everybody. Just thank you for allowing me to introduce myself. It's Speaker Damon, and I'll quietly sit in the back and be quiet. Thank you. Thank you very much. We can go on introductions for our guests here today. I'll start off with Militia.
Okay, there we go. Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny Lichter. I'm a Deputy Assistant to President Trump and Deputy Director of the Domestic Policy Council in the White House. Our portfolio on the Domestic Policy Council is pretty broad, and it covers most, if not all, of the issues that we're here to discuss with you today. So my team coordinates policy alongside the Departments of Justice, Labor, Health and Human Services, Education, the VA, Housing and Urban Development, and a number of others. So we have policy experts on my team who work in all of those areas, and we serve as essentially the central coordinating hub for domestic policy that touches all of those issues, working out of the White House. I have been very honored and grateful to have had the opportunity in my 18 plus months in the White House to work with Doug and his team in Intergovernmental Affairs alongside our tribal partners. And I'm really happy and very, very thankful for the opportunity to be here with all of you. Grateful for your warm welcome and your hospitality, for the delicious lunch that you've shared with us, and really grateful for your feedback, your frank and honest input on the issues on which we can continue to partner with you and partner with you more effectively to solve problems that are facing the people you represent here on Navajo Nation. So thank you very much for your input this morning, and thanks in advance for the good conversation this afternoon.
Doug.
Thank you very much, Speaker Damon, Vice President Leiser, Second Lady Leiser, and the council members. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you. My name is Doug Hoelscher. I'm Assistant to the President and Director of the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs at the White House. And we work very closely with Jenny on the tribal partnership and working in collaboration with our tribal partners from across the nation. My office is in charge of maintaining the relationship with not only tribal leaders, but also state and local leaders as well. But it's really an honor to be here in the Navajo Nation's People's House. And it was a great history lesson, and we appreciate you sharing not only your culture, but your hospitality during our visit here today. Again, we had some really good conversations this morning, but I'm proud to be joined by a delegation of federal leaders who are here with us today, who traveled here to meet you in your capital, in this government-to-government, sovereign-to-sovereign relationship. I think it's really important that we meet you at your table on a regular basis as well. And so that's why we all made the journey here, to make sure that we see the culture, we see the land. The Navajo Nation looks big on a map. It looks bigger in person. So that's one thing that I've taken away from this trip already. And but again, I appreciate folks from the Deputy Secretary from HHS, Eric Hargan, and the Department of Interior team, has several folks here, and the variety of the federal family has been introduced. Last week, Vice President Leiser mentioned that President Trump introduced his plan, his policy vision for Indian country in the Putting America's First Peoples First, Forgotten No More plan. And in the conversations this morning, I was struck often by how many of the policy priorities that you have, that you put forth in the conversations this morning, are really shared priorities on safer communities, on better health, on improved infrastructure. And so I really see a lot of an opportunity there to work together to make sure that we're tackling those, but also not just talking about them, but making progress on those issues. And I think that's something that I heard very loud and clear from you, but it's also something I hear very loud and clear from President Trump, is wanting to see action on the areas that are of importance. And so with the president, I just want to highlight a few things that the president and the team have worked very closely. Native American unemployment before the pandemic reached its all-time historic low. Now, recognizing there are still pockets of unemployment around the country and different tribes impacted differently, but I think there's a model there to build upon, to work together to how do we leverage that previous success to come out of the pandemic even stronger? How do we leverage tools like the CARES Act to make sure that we're building things, we're using it in the long term to build communities stronger and safer and healthier? And so I think there's a lot of things that came up in the discussion this morning. I know there was a discussion on Operation Lady Justice and safer communities and the long overlooked issue of missing and murdered Native Americans. I know Vice President Leiser and Second Lady joined the President in the Oval Office just about a year ago when he signed an executive order creating Operation Lady Justice. And that's been one of the most proud activities and projects that I've been a part of in my role at the White House. On repatriation, we've worked with a variety of Southwestern tribes to repatriate culturally important artifacts and human remains from Finland back to the U.S., a project that was 70 years in the making. But this administration worked with those tribes, worked with the Finland government to get those artifacts and human remains back to where they should have been all along. And opportunity zones, we talked about opportunity zones in our meeting this morning, and I think there's a lot of things we can do to leverage that new tool in our economic development toolkit that wasn't there just a few years ago. And just in the last few weeks, the President signed the Savannahs Act, the Not Invisible Act, and the Progress Act. The first two are very keenly connected to safe communities. The Progress Act is connected to respecting your sovereignty and empowering you with decision-making power. And so I think that's really an important tool that's out there. Recently, the Department of Transportation also implemented an empowerment program to make sure that tribes can do that. And tomorrow we'll meet up with some of the Navajo leaders again to open a school that's been in the works for many, many years. And so I think that ties into the President's plan of talking about improved education. And it was good to hear some of your higher education priorities as well. And so again, thank you for the opportunity to be with you, to meet you at your table, to learn about your culture, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Doug.
Sullivan. I am here from the Department of Justice, and first, let me give just a heartfelt thank you from Attorney General Bill Barr. Native American issues and in solving public safety issues in Native American communities is without question a priority to him. I am very fortunate to run the Office of Justice Programs for the Attorney General, and that's the grant-making component. So many of you are familiar with that. And I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, Vice President Leiser, as well as the Second Lady, who I had a great conversation with this morning, and everyone else here for hosting us. It's really just always profound and life-changing to actually go. As Doug said, you can see it on a map and you can read about it, but there's nothing like visiting Indian country and then bringing that passion and back with you to Washington, D.C. as you work on issues. I think it's so important, this government-to-government relationship that we have and the trust responsibility that we have to you, that we do see each other as people, and that it changes everything when it's face-to-face this way. And it's even more impactful for us to be, as Doug said, in your chambers, in your house. And so thank you very, very much for hosting us. The Attorney General, a year ago, about a year ago, the President did sign the executive order which formed Operation Lady Justice. Attorney General Barr is one of the co-chairs, along with Secretary Bernhardt. I was asked by the Attorney General to be his representative as a co-chair on the on Operation Lady Justice, and has been tremendous. This year, we had planned on doing tons and tons of visits, but just like everyone talked about with COVID, we had to change. But you know what we did? We kept doing the work, and we just figured out a way to continue to do the work and get it done. And so besides 5 listening sessions prior to COVID, we had 4 more after the health crisis, when we felt that you Native Americans as our partners were prepared. And then we started formal consultations so that we can get ready for an interim report, which is due to President Trump on November the 26th. Consultation written feedback ends on October 31st. We extended that period of time to make sure that we were able to hear from everyone. And once that is completed, we will go forward with the interim report. We're so excited about Operation Lady Justice and the work that we've done and how it dovetails and how it can help inform and really do the work of Savannah's Act, and the Not Invisible Act, especially the commission that is formed by the Not Invisible Act. And I think that we can show we can get a tremendous amount completed in a short period of time. I want to, on the COVID issue, I just want to say that very shortly after the CARES Act passed, we were able to get approximately $500,000 to the Navajo Nation for PPE. That went to your law enforcement. It helps with detention centers and law enforcement officers in order to help to keep them safe. I know that probably wasn't nearly enough, obviously, with the bandwidth and everything that you have, but we were glad to be able to help in that way. And obviously, look, always at other grant opportunities. Attorney General Barr, along with President Trump, have made it crystal clear that working with Native Americans and finding real solutions after consultation and real solutions that obviously honor first and foremost your sovereignty is a priority. There's just no question about it. Attorney General Barr has me working on a very regular basis on how we can streamline and make grants so that they are more usable and more useful to all of you. So thank you so much for having us. This is a great honor and privilege, and I love meeting all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
There it goes. Hey. Thank you very much for being here. Very pleased to be here as the Deputy Secretary of Health and Human Services. One of the the overarching department that contains within itself the Indian Health Service, headed by Admiral Wiaki, the Administration for Native Americans, headed by Commissioner Hovland. And we're very happy to be here. It's my second tour of duty in the federal government at Health and Human Services. I was here under President Bush, where my first agency as a new lawyer there was the Indian Health Service. 17 years ago. So it's always, these issues have been sort of something that I've been dealing with throughout my federal service, and always happy to talk with you and share with you all the things that I think we've been able to do together in the Indian Health Service and at HHS to be able to support the tribes throughout the country. So it has been, so we've had a lot of good interactions over this time. You've seen now with this administration, a lot of the issues, tribal issues, have really been elevated in a way that they haven't before. For example, we now have the stack once a year in Indian country, which has never been done before. It was always in Washington. But that shows, I think, that we intend to come out to meet the tribes, to meet you all, and to hear on the ground what the issues are. In fact, the first one was Secretary Price, 2017 in Oklahoma. Then I chaired the next one in Interior, Alaska, in Fairbanks. The next year, 2018, last year, I was here in Arizona, I guess to the Pima Salt River. But I did come out and meet President Nez, and I think go through a number of the facilities that you all have here, the Navajo Nation, which I was very happy to do, and had my first, but never the last, taste of fry bread, which is fantastic. But anyway, on a more serious note, I do want to acknowledge Vice President and Second Lady Leiser and the dedicated individuals who have worked with us, and taking off from Operation Lady Justice that Ms. Sullivan just mentioned, have worked to prevent violence and the impacts across the Navajo Nation. We have been paying close attention to your efforts to mobilize and raise awareness among the Dine people about the issues that contribute to Native Americans missing or being murdered, which was central to some of the issues that had been elevated within the administration. In fact, when President Trump, as Doug had mentioned, established Operation Lady Justice last November, really less than a year ago, their Executive 13898 really elevated the crisis of missing and murdered American Indians and Alaska Natives to the national consciousness, and mobilized federal agencies to act decisively on this issue. And now, since that time, my department, the Department of Health and Human Services, Justice, and the Interior have worked very closely to achieve the reality that was envisioned by President Trump's executive order. Further action, as just mentioned, President Trump signed Savannah's Act and the Not Invisible Act into law this month to combat the tragedy of missing and murdered Native Americans. And I'm pleased to share with you that today, the Administration for Children and Families at the Department of Health and Human Services released the ACF framework on missing and murdered Native Americans, or MMNA, as another component of this comprehensive effort to end this crisis. The framework is one of the early outcomes of Operation Lady Justice. It creates a more focused way for human services programs to work together with Native communities and other partners. Really the first of its kind framework, be able to guide us and allow us to kind of have a way of thinking about how to do human services and how to interact between the tribal communities and the agencies within the federal government that provide human services. The MMNA crisis has long been viewed as a law enforcement and justice problem pretty much solely, which is understandable in some ways. However, violence is not just a crime. It is a public health problem as well. That results in physical and emotional wounds, and therefore also falls within the purview of our Department of Health and Human Services. American Indians and Alaska Natives, as we all know, suffer disproportionately from domestic violence, sexual assault, aggression, child abuse, neglect, and other forms of violence. We know that that violence affects individuals across their lifespan, and the impacts are not limited to the victim. They also affect families. They affect communities. Now, ACF, which is our Administration for Children and Families, plays a vital role within our sort of family of agencies in preventing different forms of violence and strengthening vulnerable populations through its programs. 10 ACF offices are committed to taking action together and in partnership with tribal communities through 4 guiding pillars that were arrived at over the last year with extensive consultation with tribes between the federal agencies and the tribes over the last year. And I think there was a lot of back and forth about how to establish this. First pillar is culture, language, and traditional practices. These are foundational, as culture is a protective factor that builds resiliency and serves as a buffer for people that are in challenging circumstances. The second pillar is economic mobility. This is intended to empower future prosperity through success in school, in work, and in life. Third pillar is prevention. Now, this pillar focuses on proactively connecting families to services before they are in crisis, not after, but before they're in crisis, and preventing violence while promoting health and positive development. And the fourth pillar is social determinants of health. This pillar contributes to well-being by addressing stable living arrangements, early childhood education, access to human services, and many other factors. Now, ACF was guided in this work by its Tribal Advisory Committee, and it's already working now to implement the framework through its programs. And you're going to hear more about engagement and the support for the committees from Commissioner Hovland. So I'll pass it off to her. Yeah, please.
Continue on.
Peti washte, Madakayapi, Chante washte, and Amahechusapi, Jeannie Hovland, Amachiapi, Isantio Yate Matahan, Commissioner to Administration for Native Americans, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Native American Affairs, to Administration for Administration for Children and Families, Edwawashi Chambu. Good afternoon, relatives. I greet you with a good heart. I am Jeannie Hovland. I'm a member of the Flandreau Santee Sioux Tribe, Commissioner of the Administration for Native Americans. It's a dual role, so I'm also Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Administration for Children and Families. Born and raised in the state of South Dakota, from the Buffalo Nation. Honored to be here in your nation, on your land. Thank you for this opportunity and the invitation to be here today. Thank you, Chairman Nez, for the beautiful prayer and for opening us in the right way. And again, thank you for the hospitality. It's medicine to my soul to hear you speak your language, so thank you. I want to talk a little bit more about the framework that was just announced. This is the Administration for Children and Families, and earlier today we had a meeting on this, and we heard from the Second Lady, who's been very involved in this, as well as the First Lady. And President Nez is on the ACF Tribal Advisory Committee. So this framework, which is now available on the Administration for Children and Families website, is signed by our tribal advisory committees, which will include the signature of President Nez. This is something that when I came into this position just a few years ago, I committed to asking tribal leaders and communities what priorities he would like me to focus on. And missing and murdered Native Americans was always at the top of those conversations and requests. And the idea to have Department of Health and Human Services be part of the solution, because our relatives are in need of prevention services. I heard how we need your assistance in helping more of our relatives from going missing, from being murdered. We need you to help with intervention services. We need your assistance in providing healing for our communities that are hurting from a loved one that's gone missing or has been murdered. So this framework was created from tribal communities' requests, and from the very beginning, as we developed it, we continued to receive consultation on the development of it. And 30-day comment period, which just ended on October 9th. And we will continue consultation as we go into the next phase, which is implementation. So I want to thank you for partnering with the Department of Health and Human Services, the Administration for Children and Families, in providing a framework that will guide difficult discussions that we need to have in our community. And I commend the Missing and Murdered Dine Relatives organization that's already having these communications. We heard from Delegate Crotty today, and many of what she's talking about is what is in this framework, looking at our vulnerable populations, meeting individuals, families, and communities where they are, whether it's in prevention, whether it's intervening, or whether it's bringing healing. So this framework is going to be as good as communities make it. It must be community-driven, and we will come alongside you and help support conversations. If you can provide a safe place, physically and emotionally, for people to be able to talk about these tough subjects, we'll come alongside and help share what our resources are, help identify subject matter experts. But we heard loud and clear, it must be culturally appropriate, and that's where it needs to be driven by the communities. So we're here to support and to partner with our Native communities through this framework. So it's an honor to be able to do this. I want to say, Pidamie Chante, thank you from my heart for all of the families and the advocates that have been fighting this issue for years for our missing and murdered relatives. Your voices have been heard. There's a lot of work ahead of us, but together we can change the dialogue, the statistics on missing and murdered Native Americans. Finally, I want to say that we also heard that this framework and our work needed to come about on a strengths-based rather than deficit-based and hope-infused, and remembering that as Native people, we've been through a lot of adversity, and we have survived, and we're resilient people. So this is intended to build upon our strengths as Native people and to work together in partnership. So thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to continuing to work with you. Pidamie.
Stevens.
Good afternoon. I guess my introduction's more for this side of the house. I meet here regularly with the Navajo Nation. My name is Bart Stevens. I'm the Regional Director for the Bureau of Indian Affairs, based out of Gallup, New Mexico. Indeed, it's an honor to have you all come as federal support and kind of in the dialogue that we've already started, as with me being the boots on the ground here. So I'm just glad you all are here, and welcome to Navajo.
Assistant Secretary, floor is yours.
Bagla gifsi, kuyanakpak gifsi tamani, chuminyama, runga tara, katuk parolak, sweeney of carving mu, runga inuperu, rungalu. Akaga me, amarua, panayuk of carving mulu, apaga Henry, panayuk of carving mulu. And I greet you this morning in my native language, Inupiaq, and so to Speaker Damon, Vice President Leiser, Second Lady Leiser, and to the Navajo Nation, thank you for having us join you in your chambers today. My name is Tara Sweeney, and I am Inupiaq from Utqiagvik, Barrow, Alaska, the northernmost point in the state. And so I welcome the snow. I'm glad that we were able to make it here from Albuquerque, and to the staff that put together that wonderful lunch, thank you. And for those that have coordinated this effort so that we have an opportunity to have the government-to-government relationship. I appreciate all of the work that has gone into bringing us here today. As I don't want to repeat everything that has been shared, I do want to underscore that Secretary Bernhardt is the co-chair along with Attorney General Barr on the Operation Lady Justice Task Force. I've had the opportunity to serve alongside Katie as his delegate. And this is a great start, but our work is not done. And I look forward to the conversations this afternoon about infrastructure and opportunity zones, along with building better economies and better health in our communities. And so I am very humbled to be here, and I look forward to the continued partnership. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
My name is Paul Lawrence. I'm the Undersecretary of Benefits of the VA, but I'm here representing all the VA. We know that Native Americans serve in our armed forces at a very high rate. So when President Trump committed as part of his administration to provide outstanding care to veterans, he meant all veterans. So I appreciate hearing from you all today and understanding the feedback in terms of benefits and health care. I've already met Jay-Z, your executive director for Navajo Nation VA. I will continue to work with him. I commit to you, because I run the benefits programs, we'll figure out how to get your veterans benefits. We understand the importance, and it touches more than just the individual veterans. It provides resources into your community, and it will align with the economic infrastructure and growth that I know you are seeking. I will work with our colleagues in the Veterans Health Administration to understand what is possible and what can be done, and we'll certainly be transparent about explaining that to you. But I would also ask for your help too. I want you to know that the VA is changing. We are so much better than we were a few years ago. It was not that long ago that veterans were dying to get into hospitals to make appointments, and that is no longer true. Pre-pandemic, getting access to our health care was the shortest it's ever been, better than many places in the private sector. And benefits which used to take years are being done pre-pandemic in less than 90 days. I know that is not your experience, but that's what I want to make sure your veterans experience. So thank you very much for inviting me here and sharing your perspective and feedback. This does not go unnoticed and is something we will take care of.
Good afternoon. Keshe and Alakwara, Speaker Damon, Vice President Leiser, Second Lady Leiser, all the council delegates. Appreciate this opportunity to return home. I was born here on the Navajo Reservation. My wife is Dine. I'm one of your southern neighbors from Zuni, so just a few mountains south of us. So it's great to be back and see home firsthand. So appreciate this opportunity. I want to just cover a few things. We've been embroiled in the COVID pandemic in 2020. It's taken a good majority of our time. And I really appreciate the leadership of President Nez, Vice President Leiser, the public health orders that you all have put in place to protect your people. It's been a model. It's been a best practice. It's been something that we point to throughout Indian country is what strong Native leadership looks like and how we've been able to confront the COVID pandemic and to save as many of our people as we possibly can. That being said, our Indian Health Service mission is very broad. We've been spending a lot of time on the pandemic, but we're focused not only on the physical health, but also on the mental health, the social health, and the spiritual health of our people. And that umbrella is very broad. I appreciate the time that Committee Chairman Nez spent with me this morning. We were able to talk about infrastructure, transportation, and broadband, and the emphasis in those areas. A lot of that has a direct impact and a direct correlation with the work that we do on the healthcare side. If you don't have clean water, you can't wash your hands, you can't protect yourself from COVID. If you don't have good roadways, you can't get to your hospital or your clinic. If you don't have healthy food available to you, that's going to impact your overall health as well. So I think a lot of the discussions that we've had back east on social determinants of health and addressing issues before they become a healthcare issue are right in line with what I know President Nez and Vice President Leiser have articulated here and what the council is very much focused on, which is healthy communities and implementing healthy behaviors, taking responsibility for our own individual health. And so look forward again to the partnership that we have had and that we'll continue to have. The President's plan for better health really builds upon the work that we've done over the last 4 years. We worked in partnership and in consultation to create an Indian Health Service strategic plan focused on improving access to care, improving the quality of the care that's being provided through our health programs, and improving the management and the operations of the system. So we'll be building upon those foundational steps to further improve upon this health and really look forward across all quadrants, all 4 pillars, to working with you all over the next several years. It is an honor and a privilege, and I'm very thankful for the responsibility of being Senate confirmed to serve as your 10th IHS director. and look forward again to working with you throughout the coming years as I fulfill my term.
Thank you, Admiral. Pernell.
Good afternoon, Speaker and Vice President Leiser, Second Lady. Nice to see you here, as well as honorable delegates of the 24th Navajo Nation Council. Captain Brian Johnson. I presently serve as the Acting Deputy Area Director for the Navajo Area Indian Health Service. It's really a big honor to serve in that capacity. I didn't get a chance to say hello again to Deputy Secretary Hargan, but just, what was it, a year and a half, 2 years ago, went out to Loop chapter in Loop, and it just seems like yesterday that we were out there. And here we are again, circling back. So it's good to see you again, sir. And I want to say hello to the folks from Washington, D.C. I've had an opportunity to talk with some of you as well, and I look forward to talking with the others as well. I've been here on the Navajo Nation since 2005 in various capacities, working with the Indian Health Service. And just wanted to make a comment that I truly appreciate the honor and the opportunity to serve in those capacities. I've met tremendous people over a period of time, and it really, for a career and a profession, and working in environmental health, Office of Environmental Health and Engineering, and working in a directorship role, I could ask for no other, not a better assignment anywhere of working with the Navajo people. So I really do appreciate that. So I look forward to these continuing discussions, and I always learn something at these sessions, whether it's a consultation or just conversation. There's always something new to learn, and I like to listen and watch folks just exchange ideas and information, and then really take that information back to how we can use that locally. So we appreciate it and look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain. Seth?
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, speakers. Nice to see you. And also to the 24th Council, the honorable delegates, thank you for always putting health in the front of as one of our priorities. This has to remain one of our priorities. And also to the Vice President and Second Lady, thank you for being here with us. As I've said before, on August 20th, I completed my first year here on the Navajo Reservation in my current position. I'm also a member of the Navajo Nation. It has been a tremendous honor. It is very, very hard work. But as we've been talking about all along, when we talk about infrastructure, we're not just talking about the coming to the clinic or our hospitals. It's really talking about all of those other related activities that one of the things that I've learned most here, and probably takes up a fair amount of my time, is the water infrastructure. And in the year 2020, it breaks my heart when we cannot bring water to our people. And we have to do a better job at that. That has to be done collectively, because water impacts everything that we do on the Navajo Reservation. So I encourage us to continue to work together. I encourage us to really look at innovative, creative ways that we can accomplish this huge, enormous work in front of us. And with that, also, continue to wear your mask, wash your hands, and do the social distancing as we are practicing here. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Roessel. Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Vice President, delegates. I'll be quick because you guys are probably tired of seeing me out here. This is my third visit out here this year. While we're here to talk about the plan forward, I have to say this group collectively has done a fantastic job of making the most of the 4 years we've been in the administration. And so whether it's working on the Chaco Canyon Cultural Survey, where we recently had the award, or it's building BIE schools out here on the reservation, we look forward to our partnership with Navajo Nation. And I can't say enough about our fantastic regional director we have here in Bart Stevens, in helping us in Washington, D.C. Be effective leaders for the nation. So we really appreciate all that he does. Look forward to talking with you all about infrastructure. I know it's critically important. I was able to see some of the washed out roads earlier this spring, and the detrimental impact that has on both health and economic development. And so we look forward to partnering with the nation on figuring out the best way forward. So And finally, I want to say thank you to your staff, my good friend Carlisle Begay, my brother. I think in Navajo, what do you say, Shinai? Shinai, my Shinai here, as well as your esteemed leader in Washington, D.C., Santee. They do a fantastic job representing all of you before the federal government. So thank you for all you do. Look forward to today's discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else from your team members you want to introduce? Hi, Doug.
With Carlisle and Santee and the whole team. So getting us all out here safely to be with you today.
Great, thank you. Again, we thank you, everyone. We have team members here too for assisting us. Thank you very much for being here with us. Thank you to everyone, again, for this time that you carved out of your day on this wonderful weather that I don't know if you guys brought it or if somebody else brought it, but thank you very much. We're in dire need of weather here, participation. With that, let's go ahead and move on down to discussion items that we had on our agenda. On building a thriving economy, topics are infrastructure, opportunity zones, etc. And we had a good discussion working together with Doug there, Vice President Leiser and Honorable Brown in the last economic development breakout. But if there's anybody that's wanting to talk about infrastructure, opportunity zones, etc., I don't know if there is a position statement from the administration or if there's something that collectively wants to be spoken of and be given to the council. I can give the floor over to you first, Doug, or anybody, and then recognizes that, and then we can move forward, or Assistant Secretary Sweeney, just let me know. Hold on. No.
There we go. All right. Thank you, Speaker. So in our conversation this morning, I just want to maybe echo some things that I heard. On the infrastructure side, I think that has been talked about by several of the speakers as a limiting factor, whether it's broadband or better roads or in some ways better schools. And so I think that's an item that we can continue to work on. Hear you loud and clear on the CARES Act dollars, and we continue to try to work with the Congress to find a path forward there. It will take congressional action to authorize an extension. To answer one of the council members' questions on the CARES Act regarding the states, they are as unhappy with the deadline as you are. They have the same deadline to spend the CARES Act as the tribes, so states, localities, and tribes are all in the same boat in that. As an administration, we have communicated our interest in giving, one, an extension of the timeline, but also more flexibility in how the dollars can be used. So that's something that the Trump administration has put on the table in every one of the deals that we've put forward. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to strike a deal yet with Speaker Pelosi on the other side of the aisle. But we have, again, communicated flexibility in scope and flexibility in timeline, and that's something that we'll continue to support. And I think that flexibility could be really important for tackling some of these long-term challenges. And to use your terms, Vice President Leiser, a jump start to get ahead of some of these challenges that have been overlooked for decades by the federal government. But I think you have our commitment by being here today to try to find helpful and solutions to those challenges, and perhaps leveraging the CARES Act and other appropriations around COVID-19. On the economic development front, I think diversification was the key takeaway that I heard this morning. As your economy changes and you want to take it in a different direction, I think there's opportunities to make sure that we're supporting you with flexibility. I think in all the conversations a common theme in all the breakouts today has been respecting sovereignty and self-governance. And so I think that's something that with the new bill that the president just signed with the DOT program, but I think there's other opportunities, whether it's the VA thinking about that and how we could do that on the in various ways. I think that's something that we can continue. So you're empowered to lead your own future, and we're there to support you in the direction that you want to take it in. And so I think that was something that I heard. And then water, I think has come up in the conversation this morning and this afternoon. And so again, maybe some of the CARES Act dollars can help with some of that. But I think working with Tara and the team, and Tara, I'll yield to you if you have any further thoughts from an economic development and infrastructure perspective. And I know you weren't part of the discussion this morning.
Sure.
But I know you and your team are doing a lot of work on the infrastructure side.
Thank you. And I was leaning over to Regional Director Stevens to ask him a couple of questions about how the discussion went this morning, and I understand there may be some additional questions pending. But in terms of economic development, Indian Affairs has really been focused on tribal broadband deployment and looking at where we have deficiencies in that last mile. In the middle mile, looking at the infrastructure that we may have on federal lands that abut to tribal lands, and doing assessments and a gap analysis on where we need additional infrastructure. So with respect to broadband development and deployment, clearly there is a need that I've recognized and that you certainly know firsthand on Navajo, and there's an opportunity for us to work together to identify where those gaps are and how we can work together to ensure that we have the appropriate amount of bandwidth and infrastructure going into the homes, and also, as we've learned during COVID, the need for that infrastructure to support online learning, and understanding that about just over half of the BIE operated schools are within the nation. We need to continue to find solutions that help our communities get connected and stay connected. There's an education component, there's a public health component to that, and there's an economic growth and economic development component to connectivity. In addition to that, also working to understand where we lack electrical transmission within Indian country, and how we can work to ensure that we're doing our part to promote the transmission development. And so if there are areas where our regulations may be stifling that progress, we need to know about that. If there are areas where we can be helpful in getting electrical transmissions out to your communities, that's extremely important, because that's a public health issue as well. And again, as we've learned during this COVID pandemic, and how we are going to be providing services to the students within the BIE school system, how do we plug in laptops? How do we charge iPads or jetpacks for our students when there are no opportunities for electricity? So looking at how to take a more innovative and creative approach to ensuring that we are connected. So in terms of economic development, broadband connectivity, electrical transmission connectivity is important, but also working through the Indian Energy and Economic Development Office, where there are a number of grants that are targeted for feasibility studies, and that marries up
to the programs that we see over at the USDA that work to target broadband deployment in rural areas. When we sat down with Administrator Roop, he explained that their processes do not allow for funding for feasibility studies. And so what we were able to do at IEED was to ensure that the grants that we were letting with respect to broadband covered that portion for tribes who are interested in exploring how to get broadband deployed to their, or the necessary infrastructure deployed to their reservation. And so with respect to economic development, those are some areas that we have been focused on, including the opportunity zones. And Desped, Mark, I don't know if there are any additional points that you would like to make.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would add on to that is a part of the broadband approach is we this year we focused on getting Wi-Fi on the 25 longest bus routes in the BIE system, and at the end of September we successfully did that, and a number of them are here on Navajo Nation, not a surprise. And so we look forward to hearing the results of that endeavor and expanding that pilot program next year. And so those are just ways our administration is thinking innovatively. And then I know in our last conversation, Vice President Leiser, we did talk about the opportunity zones and how Navajo Nation, the eastern part was included, yet the western part wasn't. And so we look forward to working with tribes and the Navajo on trying to fix that issue. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
While we're talking about broadband and rural areas, last month, our Department of Health and Human Services, along with the Department of Agriculture and the FCC, signed an agreement as part of the Rural Action Plan that we put out last month to sort of coordinate our efforts on rural health broadband. So it's actually rural broadband, but it's incidental that it helps, especially with telehealth and telemedicine, because we've seen an absolute explosion in that from 14,000 beneficiaries nationally at the first week of March to over 10 million now. It's been a 1,000-fold increase in telehealth and telemedicine. I come from a rural health background, really 5 generations in rural health where I'm from in Illinois. So it's a big issue for rural areas and remote areas to have access to health care is often telehealth and telemedicine. I'm sure Indian Health Service and Alaska tribes do it's what provides the health care in many cases in the remote villages there. So if you all have not taken a look yet at the Rural Action Plan, it has things that can definitely apply to areas like this. There are a lot of things in there, so it might repay your attention to take a look at that. It's got dozens and dozens of initiatives that we put out last month on that. Sometimes it's a little new to people, but it's something new. And on the broadband issue, we're going to be coordinating with agriculture and FCC. So we're hopeful that that's going to result in even more access to telehealth and telemedicine, particularly in rural and remote areas.
Can you hear me? Good. All right. So at the Administration for Native Americans, we have the Social and Economic Development Strategies funding, or SEDS. That funding will be coming out a little bit later this year because we extended, because of COVID, our grants this last fiscal year. So we're anticipating in February. This funding can be used. It's very, very flexible. It can be used for workforce development, and that's the SEDS grant. I mean, there's a lot of different ways. If you want to look on ANA grant or ANA's website, you can see the different projects we funded and the jobs that are created out of that. Nursing programs through colleges, TCUs. We heard earlier from Mr. Roessel about that. So it can be really used to create projects for workforce development, for job creation. And in addition to that, our language grants. Often there's teachers or language master apprenticeships which help folks to be able to be accredited so that they can be in the school system and be teaching languages. So there's a lot of opportunities for jobs and job growth through the A&A funding. In addition to that, this last year I introduced the SEDS Go for growing organizations. Through my career, I've heard and seen firsthand that many of our tribes and Native organizations aren't able to compete with other tribes. I heard about it earlier today because of infrastructure, capacity, internal controls. So I created SEDS Go, and it is to help tribes, whether it's a tribal organization or a tribe themselves, to be able to build internal controls, capacity build, and be prepared to apply for fund and maintain funding, whether it's federal or private sector. So we'll be looking for that opportunity. And then at the Administration for Children and Families, we have worked great with the Secretary's Office on the 477 expansion and with Assistant Secretary for job placement and employee training. So there's another opportunity we continue to meet on regularly to talk about how we can better support the 477 program. And then lastly is the Secretary's Interdepartmental Council on Native American Affairs. I chair that. Admiral Yaki is a vice chair. We have met about how we can strengthen the Buy Indian Act, where we need help from tribes. It is really hard to identify Native-owned businesses, Native-owned products, Native-owned services, because if they're not in 8A, there isn't a go-to place for contractors, whether they're federal, private, tribally owned, to see what is out there and available. So that's something that we are working with Mr. Cruz, the SBA, and some other tribal organizations on how can we know who to utilize, who's available, products, services, employment. So if that's something you're working on, we'd love to hear from you. We don't need to recreate the wheel if you know of something out there. We have had conversations with National Congress of American Indians on this, but we do want to utilize and support our Indian-owned businesses, products, and services. It's just finding out where they are, especially if they're not in the SBA 8A program. And then lastly, Admiral Yaki and I have been partnering with the Department of Labor on supporting Indian preference. So if there is contractors that are doing work in or around tribal communities, we want to let them know and encourage them to look for Indian preference if they are subcontracting, if they're looking for employees. So we hosted some roundtables pre-COVID. And we want to look at doing some additional, we know in our communities what services are out there, but those contractors that come in and are not familiar with the community, they do not know that, and they want to make sure that they stay in compliance. So we've been working with throughout, I think Arizona was where our one roundtable was, South Dakota was another, but just educating contractors and those doing businesses in and around the communities to honor and know what Indian preference is. And there was another, but it left my mind because I didn't write it down. But we do want to know how we can support you in regards to economic development, job creation. So happy to get ideas from you today. Thank you.
Yes, Secretary.
Thank you. A couple of additional points that I wanted to raise. We are also doing an analysis within Indian Affairs to look at the NAICS code, the North American Industry Classification codes that Native small businesses register as their primary industry, and taking a look at where the federal government most utilizes certain NAICS codes for government contracting. Looking at that analysis to see where the gaps are within Native American businesses, and eventually making that information available to Indian countries so you can see, and we can surmise that it most likely is the Department of Defense, but excuse me, where the federal government is contracting and spending their contracting dollars, and where our Native American businesses are registered as small businesses, and whether or not we can use that information to empower Native companies to register in the industries that are most contracted by the federal government. We're also taking a look at the delta between manufacturing jobs that are overseas in countries that have cheaper labor markets than the United States, and what that delta is for production in the United States, and with that delta, understanding what sort of policies we need to promote, where the regulations need to be changed in order to help bring the manufacturing jobs back to the United States. And so my question would be to the Navajo Nation, is this something that is worth exploring in terms of a partnership for bringing manufacturing jobs to Indian country? Excuse me.
Thank you. That. Any discussion topics, items, colleagues? Honorable Brown, and then I'll go to Chairman Nez.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Speaker, my colleagues, all our new relatives here. One of the biggest thing that I know we've been working, the 24th Navajo Nation Council with the division directors, education. The biggest thing that some of the hurdles that we have found is the E-rate program for our schools. So right now, I know we're talking about economic development, but for our students and talking about broadband, that's something that we want to continue to work on and support. There are some fundings there. Those are some of the initiatives that already have been going on, working with Verizon and AT&T. So right now, and this goes on to people now working from home. So we've noticed around everywhere, productivity, people working from home has increased. I think on average everywhere when I travel and in these meetings, it's about 20% increase. So we're finding this out, but the key component is the lack of that basic infrastructure. And that's something that Navajo is working on. I really want to say that and to express to leadership that we want to meet you somewhere, that our Navajo people has done incredible work and will continue to do this work. So it's not always coming to you with our hands out, it's meeting there. And those are not just obligations, trust obligations, but it's more the work that our people, I'm very proud to say that a lot of work has been going into this. So we are getting this text, I'm requesting this information. But need E-rate to be approved with a 2.5 gigahertz spectrum. So that's something that we're really pushing for. Now I'm listening to the conversation here. I think that is really key right now. But other infrastructure, again, like Doug said, water. And I think in San Juan County, New Mexico, it's very fortunate to have this water line going through here. And also in Shiprock, Aneth, Montezuma Creek, all the way to Bluff, and in that area, we're very fortunate to have access to water. But I think in addition to that, in Black Mesa area, right now we have a lot of water storage tanks that are not being used at capacity, like when Kayenta Peabody Mine was there. And I think in collaboration with NAPI and other organizations for future true sustainability for the Navajo Nation would be using the water using from in aquifer to really feed our own people. That would be seeds. I think that's a long-term remedy instead of giving out temporary food boxes. Looking forward, it's really sustainability and bringing our people back to work on the farmlands. Traditionally, not just only Navajo people, but Indian country across. That's something that I believe a big move, a big shift is going back to that, and that only is some work, but it's organic food back to our own, being in a food desert. We want to go back to sovereignty in the food industry as well. So those are some of the few points. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Brown. Chairman Nez.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here, listening to the leadership of the Navajo Nation. It was mentioned here, water, water, water. It was also mentioned, get connected and stay connected. We would like to get connected to Washington, D.C. We would like to stay connected to Washington, D.C. And I believe that letter runs true from President Trump when he says he's going to recommit himself to the indigenous people of this land. And I would like to thank him for that. That is a very strong statement from the President of the United States. Now, there's a letter that was sent out on the 23rd of this month by Senator Daines and Senator McSally. And I want to thank them for this letter written to the Treasury, Mr. Stephen Mnuchin, as well as Chief of Staff of the White House, Mr. Honorable Mark Meadows. There is a very good concern here on the Navajo Nation that these two senators recognize. They represent Indian nations pretty well, and I would like to reaffirm their statement. We received COVID funding, CARES Act funding, $714 million. Thank you very much for that funding, but I would say it's the start. The winter season is here. We saw the snow today. We need to continue mitigating, fighting this COVID-19. The way to do it, we as a tribal nation, our government here, we debated issues as to how we're going to spend this money. We did. It's finally being spent. The deadline is December 31st. This deadline needs to continue. We need an extension. Tribal nations need that extension. We're not like a city government or a state government. We need that extension. So in this letter that was sent out by Senator Daines as well as Martha McSally is pretty much requesting. It says, we are asking that Treasury issue clarifying guidance related to the definition of incurred costs to improve the effectiveness of the COVID relief funds. Specifically, we request the following language be included in updated Treasury CRF guidance. Expenditures will be considered eligible as incurred expenses if a contract for services or for the design, planning, engineering, and construction of a project related to COVID-19 public health emergency is executed by December 31st, 2020, and the services and or the construction of the project will be substantially completed by no later than December 31st, 2021. I would like to ask the White House, you're here as representatives of the White House, to encourage our president, our leaders at the White House, to look at this concern. Give Indian nations that extension by December 2021. God bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yell's colleagues. Vice President, and then I'll go to Honorable also.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for those words. I'm not trying to surmise all of everything we talked about over the last several hours here, and I'm just deeply encouraged by the words and the collaboration, and I would expect that to continue on into the next several weeks, months, years, obviously, and whether the administration stays or remains, we've set good grounds here. good grounds to continue to go forward. But obviously, you know the condition of our Navajo Nation, the President, Jonathan Nez, being Democrat, and the Vice President being Republican, conservative, and a businessman. We certainly have both bases covered there. So, but going forward, you know, again, this is for the people of the Navajo Nation. They say 350,000 of us, right? And this year being a census year, I would expect that number to grow even more, somewhere upwards of 400,000 maybe, over a land 27,000 square miles the size of West Virginia. And all over, they say you can't go around the world and not run into a Navajo. So, you know, I think that's been established as well. But what we have before us is a great opportunity, as our Mr. Chairman has just stated here, a great opportunity to advance all of these discussions. This is something that we've been living on for many, many years. I jokingly said, as I said earlier, Mr. Hoelscher, that our nation is 40 years, the Navajo Nation is 40 years behind the times, and that this pandemic has actually brought the eyes of the world onto Navajo and Indian country. And we need to use this for all that we can. And nothing's changed from that. Obviously, we have to deal with the health disparities and the economic disadvantages that we have and that we presently face. But ours is one where I believe we can open up and recover safely as far as economies go. And, you know, when you get $714 million, that's a shot in the arm, but it'll no way get us to where we need to be able to operate at a life what some of you enjoy in the metropolis of Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia. Our people here, some would rather, and I would say, you know, the grassroots, some of them staunchly would rather life not change for them and advance too fast. And then those areas would be hard to pull along. But there's some areas that are ready and primed for development. We mentioned the opportunity zones. We mentioned some other areas in the Navajo Nation that are just primed for it. Those areas that are close to the natural resources, water, land, and then you got the minerals and whatnot. And so ours is an economy right now that's just getting ready to burst open, I believe, and with the eyes of the administration on us right now. And then perhaps, you know, another 4 years or perhaps not. And then that's what we have to get our federal family in D.C. To understand, is that this will outlive us. Scripture says a man is blessed when he leaves an inheritance for his children's children. You see, our economy here on the Navajo Nation has been one that we know we need to leave for future generations. Otherwise, what good did we do as leaders here? And so, as a vice president and as a business leader in the community, and now the second highest office in our Navajo Nation, I see a great need for us to collaborate. And we've mentioned some key tenets, some principles, some acumen of good business to champion it and to push forward along with your help, going to the administration and to the White House. And we wish to take those like nobody's taken them before, like an initiative started that we've never been so sure that we could make something happen, because this pandemic has certainly listed a time where we need to realize where we've been and not wanting to look back and dwell on the circumstances that were, right? Politics, being the ability to influence someone's decision. Somewhere along the way, we were not as effective as we should have been for the people across the land, the Navajo Nation, and 574 federally recognized Indian tribes. And so I see this meeting as precedent setting. How can we use this and go forward? How can we use this and fashion the improvements that we all want to see and catch up to the rest of the United States of America, these great United States of America? My friend, Mr. Chairman, here is a veteran himself, and many more of our Navajo people who per capita and in Indian country, I think, would defend these United States of America with the beat of a heart, without reservation, would join forces with our armed forces and come and fight at the aid of the United States. It's proven back to our code talkers, even back in the World War I and II. But being that as it is, I believe we're in such a time as this here, economically fighting for, and health-wise and education and broadband. We're fighting for all of these measures. And could we perhaps utilize your help and utilizing your collaboration and assistance to improve the life and the livelihood and the lifestyle of our First Nations people, as I reminded you on the Republican National Convention and all of America, I said that our Creator set us here on this North American continent for a reason. We are still here, and I believe if I can enlist you all to join us, the First Nations and Navajo Nation, in that prayer, to advance the cause of our people and to improve the quality of life and to bring up First Nations cares and concerns and all those disparities that we talk about, and fashion a unified advancement of that. I think we can do a great thing for Indian country. And we, the leaders here of our Navajo Nation, will be espoused with bringing the rest of our people with us, the grassroots, for this expected change. And knowing full well that there'll be some that don't want life to go too fast, here on the nation. And so how do you do that? Well, you weigh, just like you all here, you're coming to the leadership of the Navajo Nation, and you want to hear what we as leaders hear from those grassroots people. Every one of those 350,000 on our land right now, and those that live abroad, many of them wanting to come home, to be close to family, especially during a pandemic, and they're not able to because they've sought a life out there where there's opportunity, where there's better paying jobs, where there's better educational apparatus. Especially in a pandemic, these are the times where we have to rally the troops, and we have the need to love one another and to bring and foster growth in our families and protection as well. And so ours has certainly been a plight that's been exposed by this pandemic. And so I just want to thank you again for coming, leaving Washington, D.C. to come out here and to meet with us, because it says a lot, not only to leadership, but you're responding to history. You're responding to history here, because we'll be judged from what comes out of this. And dare I say that we should all look at the words that were said and the ideas and the food that was shared, and we remember this time, and that we go forward with that new relationship. Again, there'll be times where maybe heated and tense as they will be, we'll be able to correct in relationship. But I want you to know that the Navajo Nation will arise out of this pandemic, because we've arisen out of so much more. Over 152 years since the Treaty of 1868, we've responded. We're resilient. We can all make it happen so much quicker with you as our allies, with you as, well, they say the Navajo Nation and all Indian tribes are wards of the federal government, but to take that responsibility. No longer will we come and remind you of our federal trust, of our treaty and the government's federal trust responsibilities. No, we'll come and we'll be bringing to your offices the expansion, the ideas and the testimonies of improvement on the Indian country and the Navajo Nation. And we'll collaborate with you at the highest levels on our trace minerals, right? And we'll talk to the federal government about new improvements of technology from our Navajo Technical University and our Dine College here, collaborating with the likes of New Mexico Tech on water filtration, patented water filtration technologies. And maybe even, Mr. Speaker, maybe building a few bombs or two, right? Maybe helping build a few bombs at our plants here on the nation. And so ours is one where we're just wanting improvement on many facets. And so thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate this. And Mr. Speaker, our 24th Navajo Nation Council delegates, and all those that are gathered here, this will be a time where we'll look back and reflect, and one day we'll say that was the day that the gears started ticking. And so I appreciate it. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Mr. Vice President, with that, I'm going to go to Honorable Ottoso, then Honorable Freeland, and then I'm going to go on to the next discussion topic. And then we can go from there, as we still have a long day ahead of us this afternoon. Honorable Ottoso.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and members of the Navajo Nation Council who is with us today, and then the delegation from the White House and our Indian Health Service trustees and our Bureau of Indian Affairs trustees. And as a whole, we have our trustees in this very chamber, looking at the needs of the Navajo Nation, whether it's a need that is needed to address a child that has been born this morning, to the need of that elder that's passing on to the spirit world at the end of today. But today, as you come here and hear the words of the Navajo leadership, what I really would like to talk about is, as the agenda reads, related to economic development. We're all here for policy. When is the Code of Federal Indian Regulations? The Code of Federal Regulation will be fixed and amended and to modernize Indian policy in this generation today. When will that Code of Federal Regulation that governs, that hog ties Indian tribal communities throughout Indian country? We need that Federal Code of Regulation to be amended. And there, we have a chance of economic freedom, economic stability, economic adventures. I had a conversation with a Navajo citizen who was looking at the international economics of taxation. How do we tap into that to that area? How do we tap into that to benefit Indian country? And as we speak today, Navajo, how do we start that communication to amend the Code of Federal Regulation to fit Indian communities throughout the United States? Right now, the Federal Indian Code of Federal Regulation is set up to fail Indian country in economic development. I'm not an Ivy League educated person, but it's just something that's on your mind. What's wrong with the policy from Washington that governs Indian country? How can you allow Indian tribes to move forth to sustain and to be adventurous in the business world? How do we do that? You talked about bringing manufacturing. Oh yes, I would like that manufacturing job, Nike. That's in Malaysia, India, wherever. I would like that manufacturing job here on the Navajo Nation as much as I want my people to work, to put bread and butter on the table. But again, every day, a lot of these policies are not destined to benefit Indian communities. We just want our fair chance, our fair share. As a child, I remember growing up in Tuba City. There was a land freeze that happened that was in place by the federal government. Federal government pushed the pause button on 1.6 million acres of land in the western portion of the Navajo Nation and said, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to help you build your homes, fix your homes, give you water. We're not going to help you develop economic opportunities. For 46 years, that 1.6 million acres of region of land was impacted. And recently, in 2009, Representative, one of the former representatives, introduced legislation to lift the Bennett freeze. From there from that day on to here, the recovery has not been really addressed to this day. When is that recovery are we going to move forth on? It's not the fault of the Navajo Nation pushing the button of that pause button. The federal government interacted. The Indian Commissioner, Robert Bennett, is the person who pushed that pause button. and allow these economic opportunities in the western portion of the Navajo Nation to sit and idle. I guarantee you, if they did try to do that in the District of Columbia, that wouldn't happen today. But if it was an Indian community, if it was a Native American, oh yeah, they're expungible. Let's try it on them. Let's see what happens to them. Maybe it was something that the federal government was looking at to try to see what would happen to us. But today we're living. We all want everything what the American dream offers. Economic prosperity. That's all we want. With that, our roads, our health care, our social being, our health care needs to be addressed. Yes, we understand there's a trust responsibility from the federal government. We understand that. But how can you help us to move forth? Instead of a hand, try to put our hands out. How can you get the policies so that it can address the Indian communities and make us prosper? So one day in the future, we won't be in Washington to try to ask for money. We will be in Washington. How can we help you? How can we stand by you to govern this nation? And then at the same time, I serve as a chairman of the Navajo Hopi Navajo Hopi Land Commission. We had two disputes, major disputes that happened. One had addressed about 1.9 million acres of land, which was a case which was divvied up between the Navajo tribe and the Hopi tribe equally. And then we have the 1.6 million acres of land that I referred to, called the former Bennett Freeze. In these communities, in these areas, we have families that live there. Their needs, homes, roads, health care, the basic necessities to move on. That's all they want, nothing else. You know, they just want something to better their lives. And to this day, we have many, many families that live there. And today, they're there. How could we try to address these issues? There's many issues that I really want to speak to this delegation, especially Tara. So, being a part of the Secretary of Interior Department, we need your help to try to guide through policies such as the land lease issues with what we have with the Hopi tribe. There's land lease. We have Navajo citizens that live on Hopi partition land, which the Navajo Nation is paying a lease fee. We're paying the fee, but the Bureau of Indian Affairs to this day has not brought and said, this is the current lease fee. And every day interest accrues. And we really need that help to try to get the Bureau of Indian Affairs to move and to try to settle this issue. The other is Indian commissioners, and this is to the White House. The Office of the Navajo Hopi Indian Relocation Program is a program that has the oversight of the White House. We want an Indian commissioner to be appointed to that position. The last Indian commissioner left in 1989. And today, the office gives us mixed messages. We want to close. We want to do this. We want to do that. And to this day, we need that commissioner to govern that office. And right now, we have an executive director who assumes that responsibility to govern and to say and to dictate to the Navajo Nation, well, this is the policy. This is what I'm going to do. allow the executive director be the executive to be the commissioner, or is that a federal employee, an employee position? Is it the same as a commissioner? I believe we have a commissioner, a part of us here. And we need that commissioner to govern that office and try to finish the mission of the office of the Navajo Hopi Indian Relocation Program. But again, you know, I really enjoy and thank you guys coming here to listen to our needs. Because each and every delegate that is here, we represent areas of communities that actually want things taken care of. But again, with this collaboration here, we have to move forth and we have to work together to try to accomplish this mission. But the one thing that I really would like to stress is the path to amend the Federal Code of Federal Regulation that governs Indian policies and all Indian reservations across the United States. And I believe that will be the key for economic viability and economic sufficiency. That's all I have to say. Again, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Honorable. So with that, Honorable Freeland, and then we'll change the discussion. We have about 28 minutes left.
Thank you, Speaker. Did I get all 28 minutes? Just kidding. My colleagues, 24th Nomination Council, Mr. Vice President, Second Lady, to our visitors from Washington, D.C., thank you for being here today. On the topics of discussing building a thriving economy and infrastructure, where I come from, in Eastern Navajo Agency, we have to deal with multiple complex land statuses. And it's not easy to build or develop or even to get a comprehensive right-of-way. And these are for me, what's really important is the need for basic infrastructure needs. When our people are living without running water or electricity, that tells a lot. And where the complexity of the land statuses that I mentioned, it seems like our best friend seems to be the 25 CFR, sections 160 and 161. Those are the unique challenges that we face on the Eastern Navajo. One agency that I mentioned in our meeting that's missing from this group is the BLM. And you know, we have challenges. We have BLM land out there in Eastern Navajo. And one of our neighboring chapters, it took almost 3 years to get a right-of-way done, just for a small corner of a parcel to put a utility pole on that BLM land. 3 years. It got done, finally. But those are the challenges that we're facing out there in Eastern Navajo. Earlier we spoke about opportunity zones, potential, and a great recommendation was made in our meeting. Why not make the whole Navajo Nation an opportunity zone? That would be a unique opportunity for us. Our unemployment rate is over 50% right now. And I don't think anyone pays attention to that. I think that should be a real eye-opener for the federal government. 50%. If we got investment from both the public and private sectors, if we enhance the hub zones as well, imagine the potential for manufacturing technology to bring here to Navajo. So we can buy products, instead of saying made in China, they can say they were made in the Navajo Nation. How awesome would that be? A unique way to look at the perspectives of opportunity zone and hub zones. You know, I mentioned the investment part, but working with the states and how we can work together for private investors as well. And the whole concept of our opportunity zone is to give tax incentives to potential investors. But I think we need to find more of those investments. Why not the federal government invest in Navajo? And that's a good question. My brother earlier brought up the Navajo Gallup Water Supply Project. There's two really key components to that infrastructure development. And we want to thank the late Senator Domenici, as well as Senator Bingaman from New Mexico, who were both bipartisan, worked in a way as a Republican and a Democrat. I wish Senator Domenici could see what's going to happen here in the next year or two when those valves get turned on at Cutter Lateral, to see the treatment plant that we saw out at Disnantithli, the water that's coming from Cutter Reservoir that's going to give to our people. And I hope Senator Bingaman can visit and see what his work, his fruition has become. It's a very unique work that they collaborated on together, and I'm very proud of them. That's what we should have as leaders in Washington, to work together across the aisle. This country is so divided right now. Unfortunately, I hate to say that, but that's the reality of the world that we currently live in. The Gallup Water Supply Project is currently still under construction. Our chairman mentioned this morning he saw the pipes being laid from the Gallup side all the way going north. I mentioned we visited the Disnantithli treatment facility as well. The Bureau of Reclamation is in charge of that facility. So I just want to say props to the two former senators for their vision, for their leadership, and what they're able to provide us today. I wish we had these talks back in January or February of 2019, and not 7 days before an election. With that, Mr. Speaker, I say thank you.
Okay, thank you. With that, thank you for as you can see from my colleagues, and as you, through the delegation, has recommended, water is a topic, our infrastructure is a topic, and moving forward to maintaining personnel that needs to be appointed by the administration is a huge topic to really try to aspire moving forward. So again, thank you for listening to our discussion items on this subject. So moving on down, let me go ahead and continue on with this discussion on better health, safe communities, topics of veterans, Operation Lady Justice, better health. So I turn it over, I guess, I don't know, Doug, if you want to start off again, or
there we go.
Bike shirt? Go ahead.
All right, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the robust conversation we had on all of these topics in this session. I was able to join this morning, led by Delegate So. Thank you. Thank you for facilitating a great conversation. And of course, I think some of you had a conversation devoted entirely to safe communities, especially missing and murdered Indigenous persons. All of these themes that we're going to talk about for the next few minutes, honoring and caring for our veterans, public safety and safer communities, and better health care and wellness for everyone, they're all key themes for President Trump for all Americans, including Native Americans. But we do realize that all of these themes and the issues that they encompass look different in Indian country and present more and different challenges, including here on Navajo. So I'll just say kind of quick words about each one of these three themes and then open back up the floor. On veterans, again, we had a great conversation this morning, I think, and a lot of good feedback from all of you on what your veterans really need to thrive. You heard the commitment of Undersecretary Lawrence that he will personally look into the issues you raised regarding access to benefits for your veterans. He and I will also coordinate on the healthcare side of the veterans portfolio and try to push forward on the issues you raised there, including getting an answer for you all about your pending request about potentially getting a clinic here on Navajo land. We heard you say that you've been waiting to hear from the government about that, and we will try and get you an answer as soon as we can. On healthcare and wellness, my HHS colleagues, of course, will have more to say about that, but I do just want to draw everyone's attention to the tribal policy plan that Vice President Leiser and Doug Hoelscher both mentioned. Healthcare, ensuring better healthcare, is a key section of that plan. And what we have been working on and hope to have an opportunity to continue to work on is not just better physical health care through the Indian Health Service, but mental and behavioral health care services, including drug addiction prevention and treatment, and some other related things as well. For example, expanded broadband, right, to enable telehealth capabilities, as Deputy Secretary Hargan has mentioned, and water infrastructure, one of the key themes that's emerging today, which of course is a health issue, not just an infrastructure issue. Finally, on Operation Lady Justice, this is a big priority for the President and all of us, as I think you've heard over and over today. Not every executive order gets an Oval Office signing. It's fairly rare, actually, because the President's time, of course, is one of the greatest commodities in the White House, right? So a lot of executive orders are just signed quietly and then released via a press release. This particular one, it was important to the President that we gathered together in his office for a ceremonial signing, and we're so grateful that Navajo Nation was represented by the Vice President and the Second Lady at that signing. As Katie Sullivan mentioned, the pandemic scuttled some of our plans to do a lot of travel and in-person work with tribal communities on Operation Lady Justice. But we've been doing the best we can and continuing to work really hard, both on gathering input from all of you, and then continuing to work kind of behind the scenes on things like improved data sharing, on cold case work, including an office that was opened in Albuquerque just down the road from here, on improved victim services, and a few other things as well. So that's a project that we will continue to push forward on. You have our commitment on that, and we're really glad to hear your additional input today. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Again, Katie Sullivan from the Department of Justice, and thank you, Assistant Secretary Sweeney, my wonderful co-chair on Operation Lady Justice, and also Doug and Jenny from the White House are, and Renee Hudson as well, are just incredible supporters of that mission. And it's hearing this morning with the Second Lady, from Ms. Amber Crombie, she and everything that you're doing with the sexual assault cases and looking at those and having a special team and understanding the importance of trauma-informed care, that things don't end when the case ends, but this we need to have continued support and wraparound multidisciplinary services. It's like literally magic to my ears. I was a state trial court judge for 11 years, and these are the exact kind of programs that we ran and found to be extremely effective, not only for the criminal justice system and reducing recidivism, but also for growing communities and growing healthy communities. So I'm so appreciative for that in Operation Lady Justice. But I want to also really tell you how impressed I was by your chief of police and the head of investigations, as well as the head of public safety. They were extremely impressive. Your chief of police in 4 years sounds like he has a mission, a vision, and then an implementation plan. So it's one thing to have a vision, it's another thing to figure out how to implement it. And he has brought to my attention a couple of things that I'm going to bring back to the Attorney General. I have a meeting with him on Friday. I'm going to be reporting out from here. This idea that you don't have 911 and that you don't have that response is something that has really caught my attention. I'm sure that I have to get a lot more educated about it, but it is something I think that fits with this broadband conversation and also sort of just technological bandwidth in your different communities. And so that's something that we may be able to tackle and we may be able to implement sooner than later. I also think that the piece about having victim services and victims assistance in our U.S. attorney's offices meet with your victim assistance service so that we make sure that there's a wraparound continuum of care and a really a warm handoff when a case is completed is something that seems like very practical and easily done. So I just wanted to make you aware from the Department of Justice and a public, and I hear that you need positions as well. You're 91 positions down. That certainly is primary. I was also, quite frankly, distressed to hear that because of, and again, I need more detail and will be digging in with your chief of police, but that you didn't apply for Department of Justice grants this year. Which is, I want to understand that and then figure out if I can help Navajo Nation move forward with that. So it sounds like you end up competing against each other somehow, and so the money that comes isn't really enough for any one agency to make a difference. And I think we could figure something out in order to make these grants work for you. I see a detention center on the 3:30 visit, and I just want to say that I'm excited to see it. And that was one opportunity this year we had, was building infrastructures to increase capacity in detention centers and that kind of a thing. So I know that right now people are more COVID, centered, and that is the primary and immediate concern, but we have long-term goals as well. These are going back to the Department of Justice and to the Attorney General himself on Friday when I return. And so I just wanted to point that out. Thank you for the time.
Right, and on the theme of better health and really taking off on the notion of the coronavirus outbreak, one thing that is going to be coming up, and we hope sooner rather than later, is the fulfillment of the promise of Operation Warp Speed, which is the president's operation to accelerate the development of vaccines and therapeutics for this, to put an end to this. In that light, and I know the tribes generally have been working very well and closely with us on distribution and the allocation and distribution of these, and we've been very, very collaborative, and I hope very open about how that's going to happen. But I do want to emphasize that it's very encouraging and very hopeful. I'm on the board of Operation Warp Speed at HHS, and it is very hopeful, it's very encouraging. This is very historic work that's being done by our scientists and researchers and the companies who are involved in it. The thing that I think is probably that I think is not as recognized is the fact that the delivery is going to take place in every community in this country. It's going to have to take place in good order, and that the planning and the preparation for this is something that really can't wait. So I just want to emphasize that. In other words, like there's the good news is that it's really progressing. The sort of serious news is that you have to be ready for it when it comes in, because, and I know it's going to be a great, it's going to be, and again, God willing, because science and nature don't respond necessarily to government dictate, and no matter how good-willed and how well-funded and that we are doing on this thing, and no matter how clever and brilliant our researchers and our developers are on this, nevertheless, I would just say that being ready for the distribution, whether therapeutics or vaccines, is something that I would ask you all to consider, since we're on the better health theme, because of course we all want to go back to normal as soon as possible. We are still, and I would say months ago, you may have heard the president and the secretary talk about having maybe millions, tens of millions of doses by the end of the year, the beginning of next year. That there is, and again, months later, we can still say with some confidence, we're still on that glide path right now. That doesn't say tomorrow things could change, but right now we're still on that glide path, and that is very encouraging months later. So it's a little bit different from purely talking about tribal health or Indian health, but it's very important, I think. And I just want to make sure that you here in Navajo Nation, because you were some of the earliest groups to really suffer from the COVID-19 in a very strong way, There's been a lot of support from Indian Health Service, and you all have done a great job on testing. In fact, the rates for tribal members is higher than the population at large in the United States. I'm glad that we've been able to support that through the Indian Health Service and a lot of the tests that have been handing out. And so we want to continue that. I know you all have done a great job on this, but to finish this off, just to make sure, and that's just a request of you to make sure you all are ready, because it honestly, as soon as it comes out, we've worked at the same time on the research and development, also working on the manufacturing capacity as well. So the factories are being built out and have been built out. The warehousing is being built out, has been built out. So it's going to move relatively quickly once the FDA says it's approved to come straight to people. So it's going to be a fairly quick process, as quicker than we have seen for any similar product in the past, because we've been able to focus on all the elements, including manufacturing and distribution. So, but when it comes down to that last mile, those last individuals, and being ready for that, I think that's the area that it would really, I think it would ease everybody's mind to know that everyone here and elsewhere was already working on that. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no other comments from side, let me go to Honorable Wilson Stewart.
Okay, thank you, Speaker. Vice President Lizer and Second Lady Donna, thank you for being here, as well as our guests from Washington, and my colleagues as well, and staff. In listening to today, this morning to this afternoon, and what my colleagues have expressed in the areas that you all have sat in on from this morning to now, I want to say I'm very grateful that you all came out. You took the time out of your Washington busy schedule to come out here to see this government, to see this nation, this tribe, and the operations and the struggles that we face on a daily basis. This week and into the month up to the election, but even beyond that, because these things are what we deal with as leaders out here. It was explained to you why we sit in here in the council chambers, how much emotion it brings to each of us in a different way. What we have endured. For myself, I'm not like my cousin brother, Mr. Otto So said in the back, I'm not very well educated in Western education, but I have my teachings from my elders. And I always tell my young people that I work with, because I worked with a lot of young people in my previous employment. And I always told them, you can have all the degrees you want, but when you come back to Navajo, that doesn't mean anything. You have to know your clanship. You have to know your language. You have to know what our struggles are of our people. That's your degree right there. And that's what a lot of them have come back to see. Some of them, they stay off the reservation because they say it's hard to find a job. And these are young. I worked with a program called Office of the New Youth for 20 plus years. And I've seen a lot of them go into the military. I've seen a lot of them come out. And then they continue to get their education, but they can't find jobs here. So they have to go off to Phoenix, Albuquerque, California, wherever, to get jobs to make a career for themselves. So that's what our young people deal with, our young families. And then another area that we have here is also that our elders, we have a lot of elders, yet we send them off to nursing homes. And talking with neighboring tribes, some neighboring tribes don't do that. They don't send their elders to nursing homes. They stay with them, they tend to them, they take care of them. Because that's in their culture, that's in their tradition. And that's one thing I would like to see. The communities I represent are just north of here, 7 miles north of here. Those those 4 communities out there, that's where I come from. Their defiance was expressed to you earlier through the murals. That was the fort that they came back to. And that's where I live. Right where the fort was, above the ridge, that's where I live. So I have that history right there, along with my family and those that reside there. But just north of there again, about 27 miles, is that gentleman, Chi Dodge, his granddaughter, who is an elder, who is still living the ranch-style life with her husband and her son. Through Washington, you take care of your leaders, your presidents, with security and whatnot, even after they leave office. For us, it's the people, the community that takes care of our leaders. I went out there to see her during this virus, to take her food and her son, and to see how they were living, to make sure she was doing okay. And we took reporters out there, and they were talking to them, and they got to see her there, the way she lives, her home. Our seniors, our families, they live like that. They live in old homes that need renovation. And that's where we as leaders, we try to find help from Washington, from the state. Who can help us get this money? Who can help us in improving these lives for our community members? That's what we need. My brother, Mr. Nez, Chairman Nez, expressed that we need water, water, water. You know, that's our life, water. It's clear, it's flat, but it's very powerful. It's also very pure. It helps us to grow our vegetation and the food that we eat. The other one is, our veterans. I talked about our military briefly on how they go in, but when they come back, we don't have veterans hospitals here. Our veterans have to go off to Albuquerque, to Prescott. My father was a Korean War veteran. My grandpa was a World War II code talker. I have 2 of them that were code talkers, both brothers. My brother before me was a Vietnam veteran. They all served in the Marine Corps. Those are my teachings. That's how I was raised. For myself, I didn't go. I wanted to, but my mom, my uncles all said, no. You're not going to go. Look how your relatives came back. You're going to follow this book. That's what they told me. So I did. But I have a lot of veterans out there that come to me. Young people that say, we need help. We need rehabilitation centers. Suicide is high. Drug and alcohol abuse is high. And it's really sad when I see these veterans going through what they go through. Some of them reach out, I spend some nights, talking with them, helping them, trying to help them. And, it's really sad that we don't have that, and it's something I would like to see out here on Navajo. Are these hospitals for veterans, rehabilitation centers for veterans. They don't have to go off. As well as a lot of our elders who are suffering with dementia. They don't, and Alzheimer's, there's no Native American, or no Navajo rather, I don't think, person that can talk to them using culture and tradition. We do the best that we can as children and grandchildren to talk to them and to help them along. But that's one thing that I think we need to improve on as well. The other one is in reading Native business, our young people are missing out corporate and industry board tables. I think that's where our young people need to sit out too. at these corporate tables, board tables, to say, this is what this land is about. Because right now we're talking about waterline projects coming in. The waterline project from Gallup, like your brother Mark Phelan mentioned earlier, is going to come behind this ridge into Fort Defiance. I have elders and young people that live back there, but yet we have a lot of family cemeteries out there. And those are kind of like, no, not kind of, but they are taboo if you bother them. So I'm telling our communities now, we need to mark them. We need to make sure that they're put on the map to say that these are family cemeteries. So the thing is that I want these communities to grow. I want Navajo Nation to grow. But I know that it can only do that with your help as a team to please assist us in those ways, from our youth to making sure they get the quality education they need by expanding broadband, electric, to our elders, making sure that they stay home, to our veterans, they took that oath, but also assisting them the best way that we can from both sides. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. One more, Honorable Halona. Go ahead.
Thank you, Speaker, and my colleagues and everybody that's here, all the visitors again. Thank you. Welcome again. Mr. Vice President, very nice to see you again, sir, and your wife. I just wanted to make a few comments. I want to go back a little bit to the... Okay. I just want to go back a little bit to the VA for the facilities for healthcare. We don't have a facility here on the reservation. We need one here on the reservation. We need to have that facility with a substance abuse type setup, because PTSD is a big problem with all the veterans everywhere. A lot of veterans have a big problem with that. My dad had PTSD too, and when I took him for treatment, I found out there was no cure for PTSD that they have. There's no pill, there's no drugs, there's nothing that you can give a person to correct that. And it just has to be with a lot of counseling, a lot of talk, attention to the people. And that's what I did with my father. I made sure that when he felt that he was back in the war again, I would go in there and counsel him. And it would take sometimes 2 to 3 hours to talk to and settle them down again. So I know what it's like to be around a person with PTSD. And they're all different. Not one of them is the same. And so that's part of what we need here on the reservation, because a lot of like they're saying, a lot of the veterans, they can't be traveling back and forth to Albuquerque, to Phoenix. It's a long ways for them to travel. Even in the IHS hospital here. When they go to IHS hospital here, they get tired of filling out all these paperwork. Every time they go back to the IHS hospital, they got to fill out all this paperwork again. And I know that the veterans have a credit card where they sign, has all their information. They swipe that card and everything comes up on the computer. Those kind of programs need to be moved into the IHS if they want to go to the IHS here, and it would make it easier for them. They would trust the IHS a little bit better. But I know the veterans don't want to be going over there for that. That's one of the biggest reasons they said. But the other part is we need cancer treatment center here. Not in Albuquerque, not in Phoenix. We got to have something local. We have a college here in Gallup. We can tie it into that college here in Gallup to have a treatment center for the people that had exposed to radiation, uranium. And that's generations, not just one, several generations. It's moving forward to the next generation. There are babies right now that are showing the exposure right now, and that's over 50 years ago. And so these things are going to keep popping up. The population, the cancer on the Navajo Nation has been growing and growing and growing. I think you all know that. We never had that problem 50 years, 60 years ago. Today, it's like maybe 1 in 3 people maybe have cancer. It's a high number. And my mom caught melanoma, and I did all the treatments for her. And if I wasn't around, who would be there to take her to the hospital? We'd have to go to Albuquerque for treatments. And it was over a 7-year period of time my mom made it. And over 7 years, we went back and forth to Albuquerque for treatment. And if I wasn't here, who would have been there for their parents? Not everybody has somebody like that. So we need to have something closer right here on the reservation. And with the new hospital that we're trying to get constructed here, I've been trying to advocate for addition on that for VA hospital, including oncology and a cardiology center. They all need to be put here nearby. This problem with the cancer is going to grow. It's not ever going to go away for years and years and years. The radiation is not going to go away quickly. We're having to live with it. And cancer, a lot of people are catching it, contracting that, and it's not a good deal for us right now. So those are a few things that I look at that need to happen. The other one I want to talk about, Mr. Hague, was the distribution of vaccines, the new vaccines that comes out. You know, everybody's been talking about it. It's hard to get a new vaccine put out because HIV's been around for 40 years. We don't have a vaccine for it. We have treatments, but we don't have a vaccine. What if this turns out the same way, that we don't really get a vaccine? What if we get a vaccine that turns out we get other health problems 8-9 months down the road? You know, these things could happen. So on your vaccines, I was just curious about, you said you were gonna try to get a certain amount for the Navajo Nation. Now, if that's true, then how much will we be getting here? That's what I'm interested in finding out. Because right now we have over 350 on our population here in the Navajo Nation. The most vulnerable population, of course, is the elderly and people who have health problems, health conditions. So I'm curious to find out how much you're looking at giving us, because generally over the historically, people of color, especially the Indian nations, have been always the last ones on the ticket. It's just historically just the way it's always been. So I'm looking at you, Mr. Hague, to see if that's really going to happen. You're going to push this for us right now, because we really need the help. And this virus, you know, it really put a damper on everybody across all of the United States, all over the world. So I was just curious about those kind of things with your vaccine. Those are the few things I wanted to bring out, and thank you very much for the time, Speaker.
Thank you very much, colleagues. The time now is 3:34. We do have Chief Francisco waiting for us. So Honorable Brown, Honorable Vice Chair Smith, Honorable Otto. So unfortunately, you can ask her maybe on the way. You can talk to individuals, but unfortunately, we have to move on down to meet the Chief of Police, Francisco, at the Window Rock Police Department now. Thank you again very much for being here, and thank you very much for coming to Window Rock, and we always appreciate that, and we welcome you back again.